Good, excellent. Thank you all very much. Okay, so welcome to this public board meeting of Lancashire and South Cumbria Integrated Care Board. I would like to start by thanking those members of the public who are observing the board meeting either in person or through the live stream. It is always good to have that. We do appreciate it. I'd also like to extend a welcome to Jane Scattergood, who is the Director of Health and Care Integration for South Cumbria, and to Trina Robson, who's the Engagement Coordinator for the South Cumbria Place, who are going to do our community story at the start of the board meeting, when we've done the preliminaries. We've had a couple of questions received from the public which pertain to the items on today's board meeting. The first relates to agenda item 11, working with people and communities, the Insight report, and it asks why the changes to vascular inpatient services referenced in the report haven't been subject to a public consultation. So Neil will cover this when he presents this item. And the second question has been asked in connection with agenda item 18, the Integrated Performance Report, and relates to urgent and emergency care plan requirements. So Craig Harris will reference this question just before Asim presents the performance report. So I know that there was an announcement earlier today, but I did just want to make it formally in the board meeting. Interviews for the CEO position were held on the 14th of July. The process was robust and inclusive. Two very engaged stakeholder panels. I'm very grateful for the level of engagement across the organisation and the system. We had some good candidates. It was a strong field. We interviewed 4 candidates, but I'm delighted to announce that Aaron Cummings was the successful candidate. He received really positive feedback from both stakeholder groups, and the panel's decision was unanimous, and that was despite the strong competition. Aaron will formally join the ICB in November, but in the meantime will be involved in our work designing the model ICB, so the strategic aspects of things going forward. But in the meantime, Sam Profit will continue in her role as acting CEO until Aaron joins, and I am very, very grateful to Sam for the critical leadership that she is providing and has provided over this period. The other thing I just thought I'd mention at the beginning of the board is, of course, since the last board meeting, the 10-year plan has been published, and this will be referenced throughout the meeting. And the vision, of course, that it describes is compelling and wholly consistent with our Lancashire and South Cumbria vision. It provides welcome clarity for the ICB and the public, particularly in relation to the 3 shifts: hospital to community, analogue to digital, and sickness to prevention. We are under no illusions that achieving this will require significant changes to the way we work, and in particular, the way in which we interact with and account to the public for the services that we commission on your behalf. I know we're really excited about these changes, and we are very, very excited. We see a real opportunity here, but there is no doubt that there's a huge amount of work to be done as we navigate the transition of where we are today, especially given the intervention that we're subject to, and our future model. But we're working through this at the moment for discussion with staff, partners, and at future board meetings, and we will keep the board updated as and when. So, to move to the board meeting, the agenda today... okay. We've got another question that's been taken outside the board meeting around the commissioning of paediatric neurology services. This is a really very pertinent question. Doesn't directly relate to today's agenda, but I did want to raise it because I think we would like to engage with the member of the public that is here and to discuss that and take it forward. Thank you. Okay, so I've got apologies from regular participants Dr. Sakthi Karunanithy and Kath Wally and Tracy Hopkins, but the meeting is quorate. Can I just ask, are there any declarations of interest on today's agenda? Aaron.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And just to respond, absolutely delighted to have been appointed, and we'll be working with Sam over the next few months in the transition, so thank you for that. But having made the announcement and it's now formal, probably just need to register a declaration of interest or a conflict in the lead CEO for the provider collaborative, just to have that registered.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay. On to the agenda then. Minutes for approval. We had the ICB board meeting held on the 22nd of May. First of all, were there any questions of accuracy in the minutes? Happy to accept those as an accurate record. Excellent. Matters arising then. The first one was the staff survey and the people plan, which are, I'm pleased to say, on today's agenda. And as discussed at the last board meeting, there is quite a heavy focus on people and culture on today's agenda. Then we've also got the ICB extraordinary board meeting held on the 16th of June. Happy with those minutes? Great. Okay. And I don't think there are any actions arising from those. So now we move to a really important part of today's board meeting, which is our community experience story. Thank you to Jane Scattergood and Trina Robson for joining today's board to present this item. Focuses on the South Cumbria place and how work has been undertaken towards improving the working in partnership with the communities. And I've certainly seen some of that for action when I came up, but very much looking forward to hearing from you on this. So if I can hand over to you both now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to introduce Trina, who's the engagement lead for the South Cumbria place. Our small item focuses on the town of Barrow-in-Furness, the town where health inequalities are most keenly felt. All the residents that you'll see referenced in the video and in our short presentation live in Central Ward. And in Central Ward, life expectancy is some 14 Christmases and summers shorter than it is on the periphery of Barrow-in-Furness. We referenced something about a project called Healthy Streets, which was created by the community. We intentionally went out to ask the community why it might be that they weren't registered with general practitioners. And what they told us was nothing to do with general practitioners. It was all to do with their situation. Rats in the street, no green spaces, children can't play outside because of needles abandoned. So that was kind of organic. The other stuff that we reference is deliberate and intentional engagement via the Poverty Truth Commission and via our residents forum. So I'll hand over to Trina. Thank you, Chair.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to try to be not too nervous. It's funny because the thing that makes me most nervous is the tech stuff, but I believe I've got an assistant, so that's good. So we want to talk about our approach in South Cumbria, and in talking about that, we need to talk about compassion, openness and respect. Those are things that the people who we serve have been asking us for over the years. And so we've been working together with the integrated care communities. I think Jane said a little bit about it already, and working with our communities across a range of different areas. So this is the Healthier Streets work in Barrow. It's a real community-led project. It engages with everybody, so all residents, whole families, grandparents, aunties, uncles, whoever. And the Healthier Streets in Barrow has been properly, genuinely co-produced with the residents who live in the targeted areas. So as Jane said, it's the most deprived wards in Barrow, and one of them, Central Ward, I think it's hit the top 3% at times. So there's a bit of information there about the number of people who live in the wards. Is it, I can't see it properly from here, is it 95% white British, yeah. Economically inactive, households in fuel poverty, lots of young people who are unqualified. And the particular streets in the healthier streets, there's 6 at the moment, and some of those streets we've used the Community Connector at Love Barrow Families, a third sector organisation. He's been doing community connection for a number of years now. Our ambition to create a sense of belonging and neighbourliness and wrap around the most vulnerable residents. So working with the community. 10 residents, so this is about the people who live in the street, so 10 of them wanted to come forward and be community health champions, so that those people have kind of gone out in the streets and used their relationships with neighbours to talk about what's happening and to find out what people need. So, like Jane said, in the really early stages, the responses from people in those streets were about things like rubbish and the number of rats, the desire for children to be happy and safe in their local environment. People are very positive about Barrow as a place to live and bring up the children, but there's lots of issues that kind of get in the way as well. Limited access to dental services, that's not a surprise, and access to green spaces. So the particular area in Barrow, there's not a lot of green spaces, there's a lot of terraced houses, and a lot of them are privately rented houses as well. So I think I might have said some of this already. Impact and outcomes, so key features of the project. It's very much about co-production and community engagement, and I think Cormac Russell, who teaches asset-based community development, he talks about everything moving at the speed of trust, and this was at the heart of what we did really. So the community health development champions are key to engaging and supporting the residents and communicating their needs. They live next door to the people that they're representing. It was important, and I know it was really important to Love Barrow Families, that this was flexible, organic, and that it grew, and that we didn't, as professionals, get in the way of the residents' voices and their needs and interests. So yeah, delivery and support from an established and trusted community organisation, so that's Love Barrow Families. A collaboration across local services and businesses, so anybody and everybody really locally. The ICC, so Maxine, who works for the ICC, she has done a lot of work around GP practices, and I know that I think they'd linked local businesses in for things like help with skips for rubbish. I've already said this, focus on prevention, holistic family centre support, so very much about listening to people saying that they want help when they need it, and they want help from their community close to home. Key benefits for residents, environmental health, cleaner, safer, rat-free streets, and issues such as damp addressed in some homes. So trying to think holistically about how we make sense of all of this. This is what the residents flagged up as being important to them, and I think that the community champions have worked quite closely with the council to try and address some of those things. Physical health. People have reported reduction in use of drugs, alcohol, vapes, energy drinks, increasing awareness of the importance of regular checkups to monitor health conditions and the implications of hypertension. So most of these people are people who have had, there's all sorts of different ways of describing it, but complicated lives and face lots of complex issues. So it's often families who are known to a number of different services and have been for a long time. And social health, so increased sense of belonging, neighbourliness amongst residents in the local community. There's lots of activities and things that people just come along to. So resident voices, as part of my role, one of the things that I did was to try to look at all the engagement that we've done, not just health, but also the community and the council across our area, and to try and pull that together into themes. So the findings identified 5 overarching themes, and also, I suppose, in many ways reinforced what research tells us and what we already know about what people think that good might look like. And we did a presentation which involved some residents on the 3rd of June in Kendal at the Place Partnership Forum, which is attended by all sorts of colleagues across the different services. And we heard directly from Hayley, who has taken part in the Barrow Poverty Truth Commission, and another Poverty Truth Commissioner from the South Lakes Poverty Truth Commission. And they were able to tell us a little bit about what it's like to live in a really challenging environment with high levels of deprivation and rural isolation as well. They talked about their interaction with services across welfare, health and care, so what works, what doesn't. They talked about the importance of relationships and wanting to be able to have face-to-face contact with us and consistency. They talked about supporting others in times of difficulties. So one of the things that I've been really proud of with Love Barrow Families is that many of the families who have taken part have remained in touch with one another and now support one another really well too. And then the Poverty Truth Commissions, I've mentioned that. And there is a real desire, and there has been for a long time, from the people that I work with and advocate for, to work with us all as professionals and to have a voice and have that voice listened to. Okay, so I think we're going to show a short film of some of the people that I've spoken about, and two of these people were at the Partnership Forum.
It's been amazing. We've started off, we were separate people, we knew nothing about each other, and we've all blended well together. We've learnt to listen to each other, we've learnt to work together, we've learnt each other's strengths and weaknesses and who does what best.
It felt like I had a place to go and I could make a change and make a difference and tell my side and hope to show that you can always achieve what you put your mind to.
Kate has made my life a lot better. Coming out to these meetings, it gives me purpose, you know, like I didn't have anything, so like I didn't really have purpose. Now I have purpose to make people's voices heard.
Quite welcome, actually. You know, you get involved.
Sense of purpose.
The monthly meetings have been sometimes emotional, sometimes uplifting, but I found it a really humbling process how openly everybody's been prepared to share their stories and their journey with us. I've learned so much from the process and I've enjoyed it, and I've made some great friends too.
Being in the meetings with everyone has made a big difference to me because I'm now more confident. I've made some great friends, and people in the commission I consider to be very close friends, and I love them, and I like seeing everyone. We're all a big group and I get on with everyone really, really well, which is hard for me being autistic. You know, I don't make a lot of friends. People can be off-put by me, but no matter what I say, they don't shove me out, so it's quite good.
Being part of the Poverty Truth Commission, it's affected my life in a really positive way. I'm more socially active. I've travelled around the country as part of the poverty network, and we feel like we're making a real difference. Not just that, it's making a big impact in my own life. You know what I mean? I've become more confident, I've become more socially active. I'm actually wanting to do stuff with my life.
It's a joy now. It's a joy from the start of being involved in the Poverty Truth Commission to the start, and to see how people have grown and their voices are coming through loud and clear, and they're not afraid to say things, and it's great. It's a joy to listen to, and it's wonderful going forward.
Okay, so I think the film kind of speaks for itself, really. The only thing I would add is that I feel very proud of the work that we're doing in our place team to really listen and trust and put the things that people are telling us into action. So I'll just leave people to have a look at the slide. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. And it's I'll open up to board questions in a minute, but it did just strike me that this is so much what we are trying to design as we think about the new ICB. And it's astonishing how much you've achieved, given the fact that we haven't really done neighbourhood as well as we might so far. So when we went with the new model, it's absolutely fundamental to the approach. So there's clearly a huge amount to build on. Any board member questions, thoughts? Jim?
Probably thoughts more than questions. Well done. Fantastic. It's a fantastic achievement. Shani and myself were very lucky. We went to Morecambe and we saw that you rolled it out more or less, not the same, but something similar is happening in Morecambe as well. So I guess it's happening across your patch, which is really good news. And I was really impressed by what I saw in Morecambe, and it was not dissimilar to the outcomes you're talking about there. So it feels like there is almost like a snowball starting to roll, which is fantastic. And Emma's absolutely right. It's almost what we're trying to do through the ICB's plans, but also the 10-year plan is effectively doing exactly that. That's what it's trying to get to, really. So basically, just well done, I think.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim. So I've got Chris, and then I've got Debbie, and then I've got Andy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for sharing that. That's amazing, and to hear the response on the videos it's incredible. Can I just ask, when you are working with the streets that were involved and getting involved with statutory and non-statutory organisations, what was their response? Because I'm thinking, for my organisation, we've got community mental health teams that would be working in there. For Aaron's, there would be the community physical health teams. Have you been pushing against open doors, I suppose, or not? And is there stuff that then we need to learn in that space?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because lots of the people in those streets, the things that they wanted to talk about were the rats and the rubbish and those kinds of things. So having those basic things and housing, good housing, those kinds of things, they were the things that people flagged up the most. Having said that, I think that the people in those wards kind of know, they've had a lot of involvement with services over the years. And I think that there are, I don't know if you would agree, Jane, but there are quite good relationships between some of the services and some of the residents who live there. Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. Debbie?
Thanks, Emma. I think it's a brilliant model, and it really brings to life, doesn't it, what we're trying to do and sort of the difference that everybody who comes into the NHS tries to make, really, but it brings it down to 6 streets and sort of those people living on those streets, so it does really bring it home to you. There's a few things that sort of resonated with me that I really liked. So the fact that you said we looked at what people had told us already, so we didn't ask them again, we listened to what they'd told us and we brought it all together. The fact that you let people define what good was, so we didn't tell them, and I love the fact that you said we actually got out the way, so we were there to sort of facilitate and support and make links, but we weren't getting in the way, and I think that came through as being really strong. So I think the question for me is, it's such an amazing model, but it's very local. Do you think that there's opportunities to scale it up and roll it out in other very local areas or with other communities who've got similar or different challenges? And if there is, what would you tell us are like the critical success factors, if that's been thought through based on your experience of making it work in that very local area?
I think that everywhere's different, every area is different, isn't it? And Barrow, I mean, I'm from Barrow, I've moved away a couple of times and then come back again, so I know what being Barrovian means, and there's a kind of shared culture, I suppose, in Barrow. So I think it's about trying to take some of the lessons, so the things you've just said, really, so properly listening to people, not assuming that we know best, trusting what they tell us, because I think in terms of what good looks like, I've been doing this sort of work now for about 25 years and it's not really changed very much, and there's lots of national evidence that backs that up as well. So I think sometimes people get tired of being asked to engage when actually they've told us already what's important to them. And the other thing is, I think, co-production. But when I say co-production, I know it's become a bit of a buzzword. I mean co-production as in proper, genuine relationship building and listening to people.
Thank you very much. Andy?
Thanks, Chair. And thank you. Beautiful story, brilliant presentation. Actually, the Poverty Truth Commission has been a way that we've been working in Morecambe Bay for 7 or 8 years now. And it really is the foundations of how we do population health and community engagement. It's actually the kind of deep listening that requires real humility and allows us to actually change. It's not the people living in Central Ward that need to change. Often we wag our fingers and tell people they must live better or smarter or pull themselves up by their bootstraps or something. But actually, what we find is that when there's entrenched poverty in an area, that language is the worst that we could possibly use. And actually having the humility to go and really build relationships with people and have conversations that genuinely change the way that we see the world and how we work with communities is fundamental to the kind of way we want to work with our communities and neighbourhoods. So we actually started in Morecambe and Lancaster about 8 years ago with Poverty Truth. And then we've now had 3 commissions. In fact, Chris Adcock, our regional finance director, is currently on one of the Poverty Truth commissions. And I would really commend members of this board to think about joining a Poverty Truth commission. It is genuinely life-changing in terms of how you see and work with communities and how we think about how we really do co-design and co-production. And it really changes things. The evidence from Hilary Cotton's work in Wigan and in Slough, the evidence actually of Cormac Russell's work globally shows that when we really do things together with communities, that we stop patronising them or assuming that we think we know what they need, and we really involve them in the solutions to the answers, and we learn to use our power together with their power, we can see real transformation happen. And this is what integrated neighbourhood teams really are like at their best. It's actually involving residents. It's really recognising the vitality of the community voluntary faith sector. It's then wrapping our relationships through the local councils. Actually, Sam Plum's leadership in this has been vital as well. She's been part of the Poverty Truth Commission, and primary care, and our colleagues at UHMBT. When we all begin to really focus on an area together, like we're also seeing in other wards across Lancashire and South Cumbria now, we can see extraordinary difference, because the problem is, and you're right, we've seen these kind of initiatives and people do feel burnt out of being engaged with and, oh, let's ask questions. But when you actually involve them and ask them for the answers and then together we create the solutions, we begin to see actual real changes to health inequalities. And so wisdom is found in unexpected places. And the other thing to note is this isn't something that we can then go, let's have one of these everywhere. It actually takes time to build quality relationships that really bring transformation. And my concern, especially with the loss of Health Watch and with the shrinking of our community engagement function, is that this kind of work which genuinely transforms inequalities and builds population health will become harder to do. And so it's important we have an eye on this as a board, that we continue to champion this kind of approach, because it is absolutely foundational, and we can see from this time and last time we had the community story just how much of a difference it really makes. So it's wonderful to hear this. Thank you so much. It's really encouraging. And we do want to do more of it. We do want to do it more widely. And we need to make sure that it really gets built into our modus operandi moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Andy. Sam?
Yeah, just thank you very much. Thank you so much, Jane, for your leadership in this. But Trina, if you were feeling nervous, it certainly didn't come across. You did a brilliant presentation, and thank you for that. I just feel, really enlightened just by watching that, because I've known about this project and lots of other projects that are happening. But when you see it like that, it is amazing to see. So thank you for that. I was going to say this in my Chief Exec update, but I just wanted to really encourage everybody watching the board and reading the reports to read the place-based year-end reports. And it's unfortunate we don't have enough time to talk about all of them, because they're packed full. They're on our internet, and they're packed full of great examples like this. And this is just one of a number of programs of work. But when you look at what you've just taken us through, it is such a great example of where we've got to focus into population health and needs and think about the wider determinants of care and health, because environment and housing and friendships and social connection are all so connected to how well we are. And I think this is a great example of that. And what we've got to be really thoughtful about going forwards, and we are, is how, and having 4 place-based year-end reports full of this brilliant information and knowledge. How do we use some of that when we're building our operating model now, going into the next stage, to make sure we don't lose sight of the importance of population focus and neighbourhood models and how they're going to work? And as you say, it's different for every, so we've got to not lose that, what is the need in this particular population compared to that population that needs something completely different. But thank you for everything that you and the teams are doing. It's amazing, and we're very lucky to have you, so thank you for that.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. You're more than welcome to stay, but you might have better things to do. Okay, what a good way to start the board. So we're now going to move into the leadership and operating context, starting with my report, some of which I've covered a bit, but very happy to take questions. I don't think there's anything else that I would particularly draw the board's attention to. There's clearly a huge amount going on at the moment, but we are holding our heads up, noses above the waterline. I'm not seeing any hands, so I'm going to move straight to the Chief Exec's report.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm not going to go through the whole report. I was just going to pull a couple of bits out of it. I suppose one of the key changes this time is that we have now formalised the Executive Committee as a formal committee of the board, and there is information on the decisions that meeting is making that will be a regular feature now, and it's obviously the details of that is in the report, but that will continue now as we go forward. As Emma's sort of updated in the, in her report as well, we are starting to see some of the national strategic direction really starting to consolidate and emerge now for us, and it's given us, it consolidated into that 10-year plan that we've now seen gives us a real direction. So we're really thoughtful about everything that's in there. It's an exciting time in terms of looking at what we're trying to achieve nationally and locally in the ambitions within that plan. But we've got to get this next stage right, and that means making sure that we can commit to delivering that plan. The delivery is going to be the key now to how do we do this, and we'll do that together. And I would like to really just thank our partners in Healthwatch and the CSU, because I know in the plan there is that move to stand those organisations down, but the support that you've given us has been amazing, and what we are going to think about as part of that 10-year plan and of our work going forward is how do we transition with you, because the independent voice is so important in what we're doing, and we need to think about how we maintain that. So just a big thank you to you and to CSU colleagues who've supported us throughout this journey, but also to think about how do we manage that transition, and we will be working very closely with David and colleagues about how do we do that. I also want to thank all of our staff for the ongoing commitment and dedication at this time, because as Chair has said, this is a very, very challenging time at the moment as we navigate through this, and people are waiting for information that we haven't yet got, and we are slowly getting clearer, and as we do, we will continue to communicate and engage with our staff. But when we look at what the 10-year plan's trying to do, the 3 shifts is absolutely building on what we would already starting to do in our strategy. So this should be a step forward in terms of building on what we had already. So we're working hard on the design work of what the ICB should look like as a strategic commissioner going forward, and we've mentioned already in this short time we've been in the meeting, the things that we want to consider as we build that operating model and we become that strategic commissioner, and we're working closely with NHSE for sort of the business case that we need to have in place to support those changes. We will consult and engage over the coming couple of months. We are going to be doing that. We're setting out some timescales as we get the information that we need through. But that won't just be with our staff. It's also going to be with our key partners, and we're doing that. It'll probably be during August and early September. We're putting on and going to put together a number of events and road shows and sessions to really do that with local authority partners, providers, the voluntary sector, and staff, to look at how do we get the best and shape this in the right way. And I suppose one of the big things in there, and it's come up a few times really over the last week particularly for me is just being very, very careful about how we do this through an equality and diversity lens. It's really important we do that. We've got lots of things that can guide us through that, and we're working with our networks to think about we do it. And I know that Debbie, in your role, you are looking at a number of tools to help us make sure that as we go through change, there are no unintended consequences here that we have by making the changes for our people. And we're working very closely with our staff side and trade unions in doing that as well. But when we come out the end of this, if it looks exactly the same as it did when we went in, we failed. So I really want this engagement and consultation process as we go through the next stage to be something that helps us shape it in the right way. So it's really just to give my commitment to that. And I am very, very thankful to people for their patience as we go through this. There's a huge amount of work going on behind the scenes about how we do this. But I know it's very frustrating and very difficult time for many people. So the only other thing I wanted to say was about those place-based reports. They are really, really important. Please do read them. I won't repeat what I said before. But they are such great examples that whilst we're going through all of this change that we're in at the moment, there is still amazing work happening through great leadership of people like Jane and others across the system, making sure that we keep focused on what we're here to do. And I do truly believe that, you know, the direction that we're going in, if we get this right, and I really welcome Aaron as our new leader, and we'll work very closely with him. He has got a very engaging style and will continue and work with me very closely over the coming months to make sure that this is seamless. But we will drive this forward so that we can do the very best work we can in light of that vision. So thank you.
Thank you, Sam. And I can attest, having looked at the place-based reports, they really are a very good read. Excellent. Any questions for Sam? No? Okay. So we're going to move into the next part, which is the enforcement undertakings and recovery support programme exit criteria. This is obviously an important paper. Board members will remember we had the entry meeting not so very long ago, actually, and this is what is expected of us to exit the recovery and support programme, and how we expect to do it. So I'm going to hand over to Sam.
I left it on before, sorry. Sorry, yeah, so in terms of our exit criteria, we are receiving, we have now received the draft exit criteria, which is in relation to the enforcement undertakings, and it's all detailed in the report. We entered into that in February this year, and the Chair and I confirmed our acceptance of that to NHS England on the 10th of July. So the exit criteria is being finalised, and it's not expected there are going to be any major changes to what you've got here. Evidence of achievement of that criteria will allow us to exit out of this recovery support programme. But we want to use the information that's in here to really drive the improvements that we need to see. We're seeing this very much as a helpful part of the process in putting us on the right track going forward. So there's a high-level statement of progress against each of them in the paper, and we're now in the process of setting up a single improvement plan that's going to bring everything together under two programmes of work. One is around the financial planning and what we need to do to get ourselves into a sustainable financial position, and the other is on the governance and leadership. And you know, I won't spend a lot of time on the next paper, because actually the next paper does start to detail that governance leadership action plan that will be incorporated into our single improvement plan. But working on these together, we should put the organisation in a much stronger footing going forward. So overall compliance with the action, with the detailed exit criteria, is going to be monitored by NHS England, and we'll continue to bring back the oversight of that through the board. So that's probably all I wanted to say, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Not seeing any? No. It clearly monitors very closely the entry criteria. So good, excellent. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the next one, which is the Governance and Leadership Action Plan, and I'll ask Sam to take us through. But you know, for me, this is a really important plan for us. It's of course an important part of the exit criteria, but it's much more than that. And I think the board will want to see this on a fairly regular basis as we work through it. Sam.
Yeah, so it is something that we'd already started, and I think as the new chair entered into the organisation, one of the things that under your leadership we started to move forward on was to understand where we stood against the well-led framework, which provides a really good framework for what a good board or a good organisation should look like from a leadership and governance perspective. So in April this year, we undertook a self-assessment against that well-led framework, and the key findings were then considered in a seminar that we had as a board, and we made a number of recommendations. And so we'd already started really strengthening the leadership and governance in the organisation, and it covers a whole range of things, including the board development and the senior leadership and the NEDs and a whole range of things that we needed to do. So there's a single action plan, and this will be built into the improvement plan that I've just mentioned. But what's really good to see is that as we've gone into, I suppose, the recovery support programme and the assessment and the review of that by that external team, pretty much a lot of the recommendations align with the ones that we'd already identified against the well-led framework. So they tie in really nicely, and actually now bringing that together into a single plan will allow us to make sure that we get us to the right place. So I wasn't really going to say any more than that. There's obviously information in there, but it aligns very much to our RSP programme.
Thanks, Sam. Any questions on that? Yes, Debbie.
Thanks, Chair. Welcome the plan and welcome the simplification, really. So having a single plan is really helpful, isn't it? Because it means that we can have that focus and that oversight. So it was a couple of observations, really, in terms of how we take it forward. So I think it's really important that it is regularly reviewed and it is seen as a live document that we use to sort of hold ourselves to account, really, and we check against on a regular basis. And I think also it's important when we start to update against this that we look in terms of progress at impact as well. So a lot of the actions are focused on process, but my most keen interest is on the impact and the difference that's achieved through delivering the activity. So it'd be really helpful for us to think about how we frame that and evidence against it as well, which will help us then looking back now to make sure that we're completely on track and make the difference that we want to and the improvement we're committed to.
Thank you. Yep, really
I just would agree with that, and I think looking at what good looks like now and assessing those metrics now would be a really important part of this plan. So I think we'll take that away, but I think that oversight by the board is going to be key going forward, but also probably as featuring as part of our own development sessions as we go through and having a focus on that.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? No. Okay, that's great. We note that we've got to approve the Board Effectiveness Action Plan, actually. Are we happy to approve it? Yes, thank you. Great, thank you very much. So now, People and Culture Committee, Escalation and Assurance Report. And I'm conscious that due to the timings of the committees, we don't have a AAA report in today's agenda, but I think you're still going to give us a bit of a verbal update. Thank you.
Yes, that's exactly right, Chair. Thank you. Excuse me. So the People and Culture Committee met last week. So I thought, given that it's very welcome today that this agenda has a very strong workforce theme, and I thought I would give you a flavour of some of the business that went through the committee last week, just to see how it's informed it. We looked at some of the papers that are on the board today. We looked at staff survey and the work on values and work on equality, diversity and inclusion. So I won't repeat what the committee said about those, except to say that we recommended the EDI annual report for approval. But when those agenda items come up on today, I can bring in committee perspectives if it's appropriate at the time. Generally speaking, what the People and Culture Committee does is it provides assurance to the board on a number of areas related to workforce, not least in relation to strategies and plans. So we have a workforce strategy, but we also have quite a detailed annual people plan. So the People and Culture Committee review the people plan every time. We check that actions are being taken against the priority areas and we monitor progress. That said, the people plan was developed before the latest set of announcements about downsizing the ICB. So we also had a verbal update on the transition plan, which is kind of more of an updated plan on current sort of workforce factors. And we also looked at areas of risk that affect workforce. And one of the things that interestingly came up this time was to do with risks associated with the fact that in the changes to ICBs, it's proposed that some of the things that we are currently doing around system leadership are proposed to transfer, say, to the regional office of NHS England. And they are to do with areas of coordination and leadership on workforce. And there was a kind of a general risk associated with those, but a very specific one in that colleagues from the voluntary sector organisations particularly highlighted the fact that as we downsize the ICB, what gets lost as well are relationships and kind of organisational memory and knowledge management about the way things that are done with partners. And partners don't know who to talk to. And when they do, nobody knows what they're talking about because there's nobody there anymore. Those kind of risks. So it's something that Debbie's going to reflect on further and we're going to bring in as a kind of significant risk. Because it's not just ICB workforce, it's this kind of wider engagement across the system. The other areas we look at, as I say, a risk, we look at freedom to speak up, reporting, and make sure that we are meeting our obligations on that. This time we looked at, we had an update on staffing and maternity services. So between our committees, the quality committee tends to look at quality aspects of maternity, but the people and culture committee looks at staffing levels, and there are kind of statutory frameworks. And I think it's something that I'll talk more about when we get the AAA report. All our providers are needing to recruit, but the other aspect that I think we need to look at the People Committee is retention. That was flagged up as an area. It's not just about recruitment, but it's maintaining those staffing levels. The terms of reference of the committee now include research and innovation. And again, we talked about the risks around this area being lost potentially or not being unsustainable with the transition and how kind of detrimental that would be and how important this area is for our organisations in our region. And we kind of discussed the pros and cons of greater regional collaboration with Greater Manchester and Cheshire and Merseyside, and we can debate that a little bit more next time perhaps, but we certainly, the key point to take from it is we are very keen that we keep board level oversight around research and innovation and developing those kind of cultures and activities within our board. So I think those are the main areas to highlight. The themes will come up through the meeting later on, and I did specifically want to just highlight that kind of wider risk across the system, particularly with voluntary sector. Happy to take any questions on that, Emma.
Thank you. Very helpful and a good introduction to the next few items. Any questions for Jane there? No? Okay, so we're going to move to the next item, which is Working with People and Committees Insight Report. Neil.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, we had a question from the member of the public, so I'm just going to pick that up. We had a question regarding vascular inpatient services and about consultation and service change. So I think it's important to note that at the minute that's at a proposal stage and no decision has been made. We are involving and engaging vascular patients as well as the public in developing new models of care. And these views are being looked at by the ICB, by a vascular network that's in place across all of the providers in the system as well, and NHS England as part of its assurance process. So we will be providing a more detailed update with our Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and we are and can give some assurance that we're working with the NHS England service design process, which has reviews at different stages. So we will make sure that we respond to the individual and make that really clear, but we are kind of working along that process. Just in terms of the report, I just wanted to highlight that this item kind of covers some of what we heard of it this morning. Trina, from one of our engagement officers working in that South Cumbria patch, works with a number of teams across the ICB, wider partners, some of our teams like Population Health and some of our commissioners around supporting some of that engagement involvement in some of our decision making. So it does link to some of the items that we've discussed already. What I'll do is just highlight some areas of the report where there's some actions taking place by the ICB to try and respond to that insight. So section 2 in the report talks about the work that we're doing to involve listening and embed listening into our commissioning intentions process. And just last week we brought together partners from Local Health Watch, from voluntary sector organisations who've been doing a lot of engagement and outreach work. And do want to really thank those colleagues for that session, because it was really helpful listening to all of that insight from all the different parts of both our teams, but working with commissioners to say, what are we actually really going to do with that, and how does it going to influence some of the work of our commissioning intentions? So I think that was really positive, and an important message, and David might say this, that came across from the Health Watch team, is that they're absolutely still here. They're still doing some really good work on the ground as well, and their insight and from the voluntary sector into that space, making our commissioners really think about what are we hearing, and I think it's for us now to kind of take some of that action, which we're looking to do in that process, which Craig's leading. Section 3 describes the third perception survey that we've done in the last 9 months. This is where we're asking some of our online citizens panel, which is over 2,000 people, some of their views. And what is being really honest, what's coming back quite consistently is they don't believe that we are listening. And I think we need to take that quite honestly as a board and look at what do we do. So from an action point of view, I think we're trying to demonstrate more. Where are we listening? How is that happening? I think some of that is happening through having some of this discussion at the board, which is helpful, but it's clearly something that we need to make sure we keep working on as an organisation, and making sure we're demonstrating how some of that engagement is influencing our decision making. In light of that, in section 4, I want to highlight some of the examples where our population health teams are really working on the ground with some of our communities, listening and engaging absolutely what was discussed about earlier, and taking that kind of population health approach with some of our most vulnerable communities. There's an example there of a video which is with a local barber who's been doing some community work around blood pressure. But there's also a link in that section to a number of different examples where some of that work is happening. So we'll see more of those examples hopefully coming through that we can demonstrate what's happening. And also that links as well. I mean, I'm not going to mention the place reports because it's been mentioned a couple of times, but they're full of examples where our place teams have been supported and are doing the work with some of our communities. So I'll happy to take any questions, but the report aims to give some assurance of the approaches that we're taking around engagement involvement, how we're working with some of our teams across the organisation to make sure we demonstrate some of the impacts and take some of the insights that are included in the report into action, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Neil. Jim.
Thanks. Yeah, I thought it was a very good report, and I was really impressed by what we were doing, but I'm conscious that we've also been told from an external source that we need to do more to embed co-production within governance and assurance frameworks to ensure patient voice informs both strategic planning and service delivery, which is, I'm not quite sure where that expects us to go, because this struck me as being, it feels like we're in a good place on this one, and we're doing a good job in so far as well. And it may be that the health may tell us, you might tell us it's different, David. So, but it feels like we're in a good place, but we're being told we need to do more. I'm not quite sure where we go to do more, basically. So I suppose my question is, what further can we be doing, or should we be doing?
I see you, Chris, and I see you, Craig, but I'm going to bring David in, and also to pick up on that how are we, people don't think we're acting on it. How do we? What are you, any thoughts, David? Any advice?
I suppose what I would say, Emma, is that's not new news. I mean, as long as I've been working in Lancashire and South Cumbria, people have been telling us that they don't feel listened to. So it's not a surprise that that's what the information is coming through. I think we're doing some good work, and we've got to do a really good job of highlighting the things that we're doing. And I think these reports are starting to do that in a really helpful way. But there's always more that we can do. And I think if we think about all of the papers that we've had today on the agenda, if the trick is to see whether or not we can hear the voice of people in every paper. And I think there'll be some papers on the agendas today where that'll be really difficult to do. So I guess that's I would encourage us to think about every paper detailing what we know from people, and being really honest where we don't know anything, because there'll be times where we just haven't had time or chance to do some really great engagement, and that's okay too, but let's be honest and transparent about where we've got some gaps and try and build on that. So always more to do. And it would not be right for me not to comment on the kind of changes to Healthwatch. So it's disappointing news. There's always been an independent public voice. You'll remember many years ago there was community health councils and Link and so on. There's always been an iteration of it. And then my view, certainly in the view of the network of Healthwatch, is that there needs to continue to be one. Many thousands of people choose to speak to us and not to you. And that's their right, and that makes them feel more comfortable. And we kind of broker a conversation, whether it's with a trust or with a GP surgery or what have you. So, it was really nice to hear from Sam today that we'll work together to understand what that might look like moving forward. But my view certainly is there has to be an independent voice of some nature. And lots of ICBs across the country are thinking about how to do that with Healthwatch and what the next iteration might look like.
Thank you. And very helpful suggestion about the papers. I think that's something we should take forward, actually. Great. So I've got Chris and then I've got Craig.
Thank you, Chair. Neil, so just on the back of what Jim said, there's a lot going on. I wonder whether there is an option to coordinate between other providers. So if I think from LSCFT, there are service user carer councils in the patches where you're going out and speaking from an integrated care board, and I wonder whether they'll be with the acute partners, whether there's some coordination of that, and then we can do a bit of a joining together in this space. I think there might be benefits for what we would then be able to tell communities that are coming to these events as well.
Yeah, good call. Thank you. Craig?
Sorry, just on Jim's point, because I think it's really important about, we hear all of the great news, but then we've still got a message that's telling us to do better. And we've taken that on board in relation to our commission intentions for 26-27. So we've already had 4 workshops, of one which included our wider stakeholders and partners. We are going to want to do more with our citizens, using our citizen panel, and include testing some of our draft commission intentions with members of the public and a variety of different forums and groups to try and ensure that we are listening as we shape what our intentions and strategic direction of travel will be for the future. We haven't done that in the last 2 years of our commission intentions, so that will be hopefully an enhanced way in which we are engaging and learning from what we're going to hear. So, and the commissioners will be involved, and it will come to the paper later. But when we're looking at how we're going to structure commissioning in the future, it's very much around the neighbourhood level, and we want our commissioners to be the eyes and ears and feeding that into the process from what we hear from our populations and our communities. So it doesn't say exactly how we're going to do it brilliantly, but I think it's a step in the right direction.
Thank you. Jane?
Just a suggestion, if it helps. I used to work in a university that did student surveys, and they said exactly the same thing. You ask us for feedback and you don't listen. So what we introduced was a you said we did format. And I'm sure this is not news to anybody, but it was actually remarkably effective. So you could show you'd listened, you understood what it meant and what you did about it. And we used to publish this in annual reports and stick posters up in corridors just before the next student survey, that kind of thing. But seriously, I think something like that might actually be useful.
Thank you. Andy?
Yeah, thank you. So I think it's not okay to just listen to people. I think we have to involve them. I think that's what the first story taught us, right? We don't want to just listen. We want to listen, and we want to co-design, we want to co-produce, we want to involve. And that's how people know that we've listened, because we've enabled them to participate with us in the change. This is something that we've really embedded through our population health leadership programs. We've now had 160 leaders come through that program over the last 3 years. And actually the opportunity for us to continue building a social movement through that kind of initiative is going to be really important, I think, in terms of, because if we don't have, I mean, who knows what's going to happen in the conversation between Sam and David around Healthwatch, and I really hope we can find a really productive way forward. But we actually need our staff to learn how to work with communities in this way. And it's not a skill mix you necessarily learn in clinical schools or in managerial schools or programs. Actually, this is a different art form, and we can teach it. It can be learnt, but you do actually have to understand the principles and then clear your diary and make some space for it. And then the third thing really is we've used a technology a little bit similar to Poverty Truth over the last decade called Art of Hosting. And Art of Hosting really is built on something called the fourfold practice, which is one, learning to host yourself as an individual. So how do you think about how you work with communities and really listen to them? The second thing is that you learn to be hosted. I think one of the things we're very bad at in the NHS in particular is we want to hold the power in the forums and bring people to our events. We have got to learn to go to the communities where they are experiencing the worst health inequalities. They're not hard to reach. We just don't bother to go and sit with them and listen to them in community venues that they like to hang out in. So the second thing is we've got to learn to be hosted better in communities to whom we need to listen more effectively. And then we need to co-design, co-produce and involve them in the solutions. The third thing is, well, then we do need to think about what are the things that we need to host? How do we host people well? How do we invite people well into the redesign of pathways or redesign of work and make sure that we're inclusive and diverse as possible? And then how do we do that well together with other organisations like our local councils or with the Community Voluntary Faith Sector organisation, where it actually depends on integrated responses. And I think if we could adopt that more widely, again, like Poverty Truth, into our modus operandi, the way we do population health, this is just how we do it and actually is part of our model. We just need to be able to do it more and better. I think the more we're going to see our communities not only feel listened to, but genuinely participating with us to change the health inequalities they're experiencing.
Thank you. Very powerful. Debbie.
Thanks, Emma. It's two points for me. So I think in terms of the format of the report, just picking up on colleagues' points, I think there's an opportunity to strengthen it around what we do or what we decide differently as a result of what we've heard and what we've listened to. And I know Neil and the team worked really hard to do that, but maybe there's a point about it being embedded across the whole ICB and being able to demonstrate that holistically, corporately, that could be an area for strengthening. So I'd welcome, as the report becomes refined, maybe some reflection around how that could be strengthened in the report. The second point is I can't miss out on the opportunity, because you've given us some brilliant insight for us to actually have the chance to listen to it and consider it today. And for me, there was the really insightful feedback through the survey completed by Lancashire Women's Improvement Network, which was about increasing access to women's health services and development of health hubs, with a really clear set of messages that came through about what they'd like to see, how they'd like services to be shaped. And that then triangulated with Health Watch's report and what you've shared with us, again, from the local community about how they want to see those health hubs being developed. So sort of my very practical question today, it's probably one for Craig, is about what our approach is to commissioning women's health hubs sort of this year or next year. And could you share with us how you would hope to listen to that feedback in terms of shaping the commissioning of those services really practically? Is there an example or an opportunity to demonstrate today how we've listened and how we're building it into our processes?
Andy has got his...
Is it yourself?
I'm happy to start. I'll give you a start of a 10. I don't want to steal Craig's thunder. I mean, the development of women's hubs is going to be something that's really, really important to us, I think, across Lancashire and South Cumbria. And we want to make sure that we work with women in our communities to understand how we do this well and how we together participate and build something that really, really makes sense in our different communities. And we are on with our first couple of women's hubs beginning to be properly developed and commissioned. And we've done that in conjunction with women from those communities and clinicians who've helped co-design the services. I think, though, that there's something really important for us to learn about how we involve the community in realistic conversations. And this isn't just about women's hubs, this is more generally about what we call the quadruple aim, right? So we want to improve the health of the population and tackle health inequalities, number one. We want to have the most outstanding quality of care that we can for people in terms of their access, experience and outcomes. We want our staff to be really super happy and healthy and find joy in their work. And we need to do all of that within a particular resource envelope. And one of the complexities, I think, of engaging with the public is we often aren't honest about the resource envelope that we have available. And so we ask people what do they want, and then we're unrealistic about what we can provide because we don't actually have the resources to do so, either in terms of people or money. And I think there's a much more honest conversation we need to have and a back and forth that it's about participation where we say, and we've seen this in other places like in Alaska and where they do community engagement and involvement really, really well, where they listen to communities and they negotiate and they say, we absolutely understand your desire to have a women's health hub in this area. This is how much it's going to cost. And if we have a women's health hub in this area, these are the other services we might have to consider not having in this area. And I don't think we broker that honest conversation well. And I think we need more intelligent listening that is honest about what's possible and what's not within the resource envelope we have available, so that our communities are able to work with us to understand that and kind of design the best services available within what we can afford. And I think there's a really important lesson for us to learn that, particularly given the size of the financial deficit we find ourselves in.
Thank you. Craig, do you want to add?
Well, he's turning into a great commissioner, Andy, now, which is good stuff. I think, just to echo and to reinforce some points, it is a part of our strategic commission intent. We have invested some money into this. We need to listen more to those communities to help shape and design the future of them, and I think that was Debbie's point. How are we going to do that? And I think it probably warrants a more detailed discussion at a future board with a paper that can describe, as a part of our commission intentions, where we're doing some spotlights, how we're going to look at women's health hubs based on everything that Andy has said. So I think it's something that we can take away and bring back for a further discussion.
You're offering another paper, are you? Okay, excellent. No, we'll take that. No, we'll take that then. It's a good example of I think it would bring commissioning intentions to life as well. So I think that would be very helpful. Thank you, Roy.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to follow up on what David said about Healthwatch. And many of us around this table have worked with Healthwatch over the years, and we'll be very sorry to see the disestablishment of that organisation. The amount of work that they put in and the effort and written reports that they bring are absolutely classic, quite frankly. And doing that for the amount of resource and funding that they get is, you know, that small amount is to be lauded. I was listening to Amy, who's the Healthwatch manager in Blackpool, last week at a meeting I was at, who was talking about Healthwatch per se, and she was very, very forthright about saying that they wanted to continue in some guise or other after the proposed demise of Healthwatch. I think we would all agree, and we welcome again in Sam's report, that we can continue to work with those organisations and understand and work with them to appreciate the work that they do in those reports that I referred to earlier. They bring their interim view reports that I remember seeing in Blackpool in the CCG days, when they went into GP surgeries, into hospitals, were really, really excellent and gave us a very comprehensive view of what was happening within those particular establishments. So I really welcome your comments, David, and I just hope you are able to continue, and I'm sure many of us around this table would hopefully agree with those comments as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Roy. Any other comments on the Insights report? Yes, Neil.
Just to come back on a few of the points, I think some of it's been mentioned, so I don't want to repeat things that have already been said, but in terms of what we can do more of, I do agree. We've probably developed some good mechanisms for listening, but it's the ownership across the organisation of it being the way that we absolutely work, that it's embedded in everything that we do. We are trying really hard to make sure actually some of our board papers really make sure that actually we should be demonstrating exactly what have we done, what have we heard, and what does it mean. I think sometimes that's difficult because sometimes what we hear from people isn't exactly what they want to hear, but we have to be really honest about that and we have to be able to explain that. So I think there is a way of balancing some of our service change processes with doing the engagement work that Andy's talked about. We're trying to do that with one of our live consultations at the minute. So yes, we've got some of the events and some of the things we need to do, but we're also trying to make sure that we do outreach for those people most affected in some of those areas of high levels of deprivation. And so we think we're trying to do that, but it is always going to be a process. On the you said we did, I agree, and we are definitely trying to do this. I think where we've got some of those examples in section, I think it was section 4 of the report where we've got some of that work with the population health teams. It's difficult to say, you said we did, when we've engaged and done it in the right way around co-production, but we need to be able to demonstrate the impact. And then sometimes there's something about the timescales. Some of our change processes take quite a bit of time, so we need to just manage expectations of, we've heard people now, but actually it's a while sometimes before we make a decision, and I get that's really frustrating for our public, and you can understand that. That's sometimes the service change process we're working with. Just on Chris's point, we're doing quite a bit, particularly working across patient experience teams within the trust. So if you look at some of the areas of kind of acute clinical reconfiguration, which we're supporting and doing the work collaboratively across the trust, the insight that we're capturing from those, but more than happy to kind of discuss some of that around mental health, because we know there's some great work going on in there, and I think my team have been connected. Yeah, I just wanted to make some of those points, Chair.
Thank you. Well, it's definitely generated a lot of discussion. And I think I'd just like to pick up on the point that David made, that we do want to put, it needs to thread through each of the reports, but actually, if it can't, let's just be open about it, if we haven't had time, because actually that's just as important. But thank you, some really good points there. Okay, so we're now going to move on to the ICB staff survey update. Debbie.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Just to put this paper and the next paper in context, we were due to include a copy of our people plan in today's board paper, but unfortunately we missed it out. But I'll make reference to it as we're going through. So the people plan has been divided into 7 priority areas, and the next 2 papers that I'm going to talk through is the priority area around developing an organisational culture for delivery. So I will take the staff survey paper as read, but I'll just pull out some key points. The paper covers not only the ICB position in terms of the staff surveys we've undertaken since January 2024, but it also 2025. It also talks about the national staff survey that was undertaken by our system partners. So just to focus first on the ICB position, in around the autumn of 2024, we made the difficult but very thoughtful decision not to participate in the national staff survey, and I think we mentioned it at the board, to the board at that time. And the reason being was that over the previous few years of surveys, there wasn't clear evidence that we had followed through from what we'd heard. And we wanted to be open and honest about that. And we also wanted to give ourselves the opportunity to redress that with our staff, which we did. And the second paper I'm going to talk to about the culture and the values talks to that point. So what we decided to do, though, is take a period of focused time to address the feedback that we'd received and then survey our staff in January. And in the paper that you have before you, you have the results of the pulse survey that we undertook in January. And you will see from that paper, actually, it was one of the, we had the most responses from our staff that we've ever had as an ICB during that time. And actually, some of our responses and indicators in terms of our responses were some of the best when compared to other ICB nationally. There were clearly some areas that we needed to focus on, and we introduced some action plans to address that. Also in the paper, you will see the surveys that we did subsequent to that. So April 2025, we undertook another pulse survey, and we've only just done one again in July. But in between that also, we undertook some wellbeing check-ins, which we do regularly with our staff. But I suppose what I need to sort of focus on now is where we are now. Where we are now, and that's been since we've had the announcement of the redesign of the ICB and us going through a change process ourselves. And you will see from those results that morale is low in terms of our staff. There are particular areas that we need to focus on in terms of supporting people through change, supporting them with robust communication. Although they do state that our internal engagement is they speak highly of that. But clearly these results signal an organisation that is going through change, and it's around, you know, us supporting staff with motivation and helping them to work towards change, which we have done in the action plan that is attached. We're also continuing to undertake pulse checks, as I said, through the wellbeing checkings, and I've included the most recent one in the papers, which I think was in June. So that's where we are in terms of the ICB position. The just to talk very briefly around the system feedback, which was the last year's survey. This forthcoming survey will be this autumn, so the feedback is a little bit dated, but it's here for you to say. It has been to our People and Culture Committee, and we've had a very detailed conversation around that. The system survey results are not too dissimilar, and again reflecting the staff organisational change that we've been going through as a system, the financial pressures, the impact of the recruitment freezes. But we are again working with our trade unions, and we recently had a local staff partnership forum where we discussed specifically the staff survey results and what we can do around morale together. And also we've addressed that with discussed that also with NHS England, who are also offering us some support around these areas. So I'll stop there for this paper, and if there are any particular questions, Emma, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you, Debbie. Questions? Yes, Aaron.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Debbie. I think this, for me, is probably as important as the conversation we've just been having for quite a while around engagement and interaction with our communities. So you can see across the survey results real pressure being reflected from our colleagues at a time when we're asking them to go even further and innovate and transform and actually put themselves in positions where jobs and futures are at risk, and ask them to deliver more and more. It's a really difficult ask, a really difficult challenge. So one of the things to reflect on is to not look at the staff survey through a period of just change, because I think the transformation and innovation work is going to be over the next 3 to 5 years. And whether we can attach some of the methodology and work that we'd heard from Healthwatch, from Andy on Poverty Truth Commission and the Heart of Hosting, whether we need to think about our workforce engagement in a similar way, because a lot of it is quite transactional. It's around consultation, engagement, staff side support. I think we probably need to think about our culture around colleague engagement in the same way.
Yeah, thank you. Sheena.
Yeah, just building what Aaron said, I absolutely agree with him, and I think one of the things that should have started by saying thank you very much for the report, Debbie. It's a really, really helpful report, and I think it's a very honest report as well, and I think gives a really good perspective of how our colleagues are feeling. I think just building, as I said, what Aaron said, taking things forward. What I think is really important is that deep engagement with people, so that it is about co-production, it is coming alongside people, it is about saying, I absolutely agree with it's helpful to use, Jane, you said we did, but I think we can go, and I know that's what you have been doing in the university sector, is that you said what we did together. So I think it's the together stuff that that we absolutely need to get even better at. And I'd absolutely agree with what Aaron said about it's kind of, we do things in silos. So we do, and we're great at doing it in the NHS. We'll do a little silo over here, a little silo over there. Actually, it's all the same thing. So if we really are in the sweet spot about really getting things right, it's when we've got people working alongside each other as equals, whether that's a colleague, that's a member of the public, somebody receiving care, their loved ones, etc. And that's the transformation work that you've described. We have to get ourselves into a very different space if we're really going to make sure that we can make the impact and transformation that we want to see. And it's a very, very different way of working, and it will take time for us to work our way through it. And actually, in working our way through it, we have to do it with people. So it's not for us to say how we do it, it's how do we do it together and do that together. So it's the together bit, I think, and changing that, doing that transformation work in a very different way. And recognising the 3 shifts at the same time, because it's not, you know, there's a whole different way of being that we'll have to really start to think about. So that was all I just wanted to say. I know that's kind of like, it's not about the here and now, because there's some stuff about the here and now as well, about how do we really work with people about making sure that these changes are as equitable as possible, and we really listen to the best way to do that. So thank you, Emma.
No, thank you. I think that's right. And I think to a certain extent the next paper will demonstrate that a little bit, but I think it's an important point. I was debating, we need to think about how we do that, don't we? Yeah. And we need to have a plan for how we do it. Which probably still needs some more work in the context of the transition that we're going through. Thank you. Any other thoughts on that? No. Yes, Chris.
Sorry, Emma. It was just a point in the paper, Debbie, where we talked about not doing the previous year's national staff survey. I'm not aware of many organisations that wouldn't have done the national staff survey. And I wonder whether that's a reflection for us coming into this year, when that will be looking to go live in November time.
Well, the thing is, ICBs are not mandated to undertake the survey, and that's why we made that decision. There's a survey coming up this autumn from September, and we had committed to the organisation that we would participate in the survey in September 2025, when we made the decision in 2024. So I think that needs to be again considered. We have polled our staff, and I think the poll that we did do recently was that they did want to participate despite the changes, but we had that flexibility, and that's why we exercised it.
Yeah, I mean, the difficulty, as I always remember with the national survey, is the timing is such that by the time you've got the results, you're sort of, yeah. So in fact, the pulse surveys are not to say we shouldn't be doing it, but the pulse surveys, the more frequent surveys and touch points are really important. Jane.
Just briefly, I'm struck by this kind of theme running through the whole meeting so far, right from the presentation at the beginning, about the lady who said, don't just keep asking us. You know, we've told you already, don't ask us again. And that was kind of the point about not doing that survey, wasn't it, which had support. And also about the difference between listening and effective engagement, and how there are parallels there for communities and staff. And Sheena, you're completely right. It's not just you said we did. There's something much more sophisticated around all of that. But the parallels and the kind of methodologies and approaches are absolutely the same, aren't they? So we should be doing some transferability here about how we go about this, I think.
David.
Yeah, just a quick point, Emma. There's some synergy with the conversation around how we engage with people, but the part that really stands out for me is about the non-negotiables and the red lines. So as we engage with people, there'll be some things that we just simply can't do. That's what Andy was describing before. This is the envelope of money we have available. We might want to do this, but we might not be able to. And I think there's absolutely the same with our staff, isn't there? The staff that work in the system. There'll be some things that they might expect us to do and they might want us to do, and we might simply have to be really honest and say that's not possible. So I think really understanding what red lines are around and you know what the parameters of a particular decision are is really important. I'm really pleased that we're going to be doing the staff survey this year. I didn't think it was a good call not to do it last year. I understand the reasons, but it's never wrong to ask our staff how they're doing, is my view. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. I am going to move on to the next paper.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So, I mean, this paper talks about the culture and values work. So, and it moves seamlessly from the decision not to undertake the staff survey. Again, colleagues will recall that in October 2024, we decided to have an organisational reset, and we had an all-staff event in Blackpool where we undertook that. And also during that period of time, we decided to work on our values and the behaviours that we wanted to see from this new organisation with the reset of values and behaviour. And that was co-produced, co-designed and co-produced. So actually we were using those terms actually. You said we're doing together. And he was played a key role in that day, as well as other colleagues as well around the table. So this paper really talks about that journey from October 2024 and the work that we've done since that point in time. So we have we've developed with our staff some really great values and behaviour standards. The values are compassion, integrity, respect and inclusion. Not too dissimilar from what you would see from other NHS organisations, but I think the most important thing with this piece of work is it was the fact that it was co-designed, actually more bottom-up than I've ever experienced in any of my other roles actually, a bottom-up approach, but also the importance of us demonstrating and living those values is something that we've really wanted to come out as a theme as part of the work that we've done. And that, again, that actually started, from examples from our leadership. So in this paper, you will see the framework and the toolkit that we have developed for our staff. With the work that we've done, we've developed a comprehensive leadership development program and staff support. We've identified some challenging teams and areas that we've worked, and we've provided intensive support to those teams. And actually what you will see from the paper is a quote from one of those teams around how it has changed the way they've worked as a team and improved their way of working. So from this also, we've developed a three-phase organisational development plan that we're going to move into the new, to support the development and the design of the new ICB. And also, I'm sure colleagues will know that as part of this work, we have invited our board members to sign our values pledge, and I know that most people around this table have done that, just to show our staff that the board is committed to live and live the values and apply the values as we're undertaking this very difficult period of transformational change. I'll stop there, Emma. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. I thought this was a really great paper, and I'm delighted to have signed my pledge. Any thoughts, comments? Yes, Sam.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the work that we've done since last October, it's really built on that day really that we had, and it did come from we hadn't most of the organisation there that day. It did come from that day, but actually I have to say, as a real example, going through this change process we're going through now, it's actually been really helpful having these values, because we are actually actively thinking through everything we're doing with those in mind. And this is not we're an organisation, let's have a few values and stick them up on the website. This is absolutely, ingrained in what we're doing and how we do it. We'll be starting to see these in the way that we recruit, the way we appraise people, because it's about the how, not just the what. And it is really, really great having these. And as we move through this change, it'd be really good to continue to build on this, Aaron.
Aaron, and then I've got David.
Thank you. I do think there's something in the, so this piece of work is great, and I think Chris had said in an early meeting today, the system is starting to recognise change within the ICB, and kind of engagement with partners is feeling really different. Having done quite a bit of this kind of work before in challenged organisations, there's a professionalism and a discipline to values. So really pleased to hear like the BAU, the business as usual, putting it into structures. There's definitely something about a board role modelling these, but also role modelling promoting when it's seen in the organisation through our stories and engagement, but also what happens when the values aren't adhered to. if they're important, then they have to form part of our model going forward, which means consequences and reflections and training for colleagues who are struggling with the value. So I think this is a great piece of work. I mean, it's a great platform for the kind of building from, just to explore, I guess, the professionalism, the structure, the discipline that comes from that, as well as the engagement, is important for us.
Thank you. David?
Thank you. Aaron's kind of covered my point really, but obviously supporting staff and encouraging them to feel like they can raise challenge and concern appropriately with the staff that they work with, and kind of speaking truth to power, I guess, is so vital. So we've got to signal that that's absolutely okay, and I think, Aaron, what you're describing there is some kind of a framework that supports people to do that really well. It's really difficult, isn't it, to stand up and be counted when somebody that you're working with or somebody that you're working to isn't living and breathing the values. But if the ICB wants to be a different type of organisation, then it'll need to do that really well.
Thank you. Did you want to come back, Debbie? Oh, Debbie Corrigan.
It doesn't help because there's two Debbies together, does it? I'm just picking up on Aaron's point, really. It's just a reflection, because I think we do have a responsibility, and we've made a commitment to model this, haven't we, as a board, in terms of how we work, what we do, what decisions we make. So in terms of bringing it to life, I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to embed some of this framework within the governance development plan that we've got, to make it more specific to us. So how through that plan will we demonstrate those 4 values? And then there might even be an opportunity to build it in as a reflection at the end of each board meeting. So at the end of the meeting, have we actually demonstrated that in the way that we've behaved and the decisions that we've taken? So just an idea, really, trying to think about how to embed it and bring it to life more, and then be able to evidence to ourselves, reflect ourselves, and also demonstrate to teams.
Yeah, and I think in a sense you're picking up on David's point as well. It needs to become part of the way in which everything is, we think about everything, isn't it? Yeah. Sheena?
I do commend this piece of work, and I think it's very well set out again. And I particularly take people to the self-work building, personal resilience slides, and building our culture with others, because I think this isn't just a sort of, as many people around the table said already, this isn't just a kind of a set of statements. It's actually, how do you build that into people's everyday experiences, both personally but also in the way that they work in their sort of relationships with colleagues, with our partners, and all the way that and it's how we do business. So I think very well set out. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheena. And I've got Julie, and then I'm going to give us a break.
I wonder if you should seize the opportunity in a form of a year's review with the staff, because a lot of what we're talking about is about that closing that feedback loop, isn't it? So what do the staff think about how we're performing against enforcing those values? Where do they feel they're at the annual mark in October? Just a thought.
Yep, we'll note that down as an action. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, I propose that we take a break back at just 5 minutes, if that's okay. Back at 2:40. Cue for the loos. Excellent. Welcome back. So we're now on the next section, which is developing the system and strategy. And the first paper in this is The Future of Community Services. I'm going to hand over to Craig.
Thank you, Chair. I will take the paper as read, but I think this is a really important paper, as it's a paper framed as us as a strategic commissioner for the future, and I think our community services, and by our community services I do mean all our encompassing community services, not just those provided by either our acute or mental health trust, but community services, as we've heard today, within neighbourhoods and actual communities. And it was really fantastic to hear the story today about listening to those communities, hearing what they were saying and turning that into action with them to make a difference for our people and our population. So it is also timely, as we've heard in many different conversations and updates from both our Chief Exec and you, Chair, about the 10-year health plan that really shows a shift from hospital to community, but also from illness to prevention. And I think we really need to strategically consider what our community services in entirety need to look like for the future. So this paper has been built on a number of seminars and workshops and engagement, and to pick up David's point earlier, it's probably not got that strong voice of the people yet, because that's hopefully the next stages of the development of what we are going to look at to consider for our options for community services. And absolutely it needs to engage with our communities about what services are right for them. Equally, it's probably light on our primary care sort of conversation, but timely, because Andy and I are having what we've described as a big conversation with primary care as the start of how do we want to work with primary care in the future next week. So I think that will dovetail, and as we start to see further papers to board on what our potential community services future looks like, I think it does need to ensure that it includes the voluntary sector, it includes our acutes and community services in the NHS, it also includes our primary care colleagues and obviously our citizens and people. I think there is some important elements in the paper that just give some of the background. So the neighbourhood health services and what that looks like is really important to us, and how we do that I think is critical. So our operating model for the future for an ICB, based on the blueprint that's been nationally mandated, really starts to think about how we shift our commissioning to have a focus in our population health footprints through our neighbourhoods. And there is some work we're doing as a pathfinder in some parts of our patch that will really start to test our model on have we got this right. I think there's also a case for how we standardise our community services. So there are inequalities and there are variations, and we really need to address that through our Commission of the Future, and also how we look to do that left shift from hospital to community. What does that mean for our investments? What does that mean for how we really truly shift resources around the system? We've also described under section 4 in the paper the current arrangements, because they do differ in Lancashire and South Cumbria, and I think it's important that people understand that not all of the community services are provided by our local acute provider, and actually there's a different set of arrangements between our mental health trust, our acute providers and a private provider. And what we do in the future, I think it's going to be really important to consider how we shift from A to B. And there are a number of commissioning options that I've also outlined in Table 2 that I'm not going to go through, but it just shows you some of the architecture of how you can do some of this. That, for me, is not important as what we're going to do and the way in which we're going to do it. And that has got to be, and it links to Neil's report earlier, about that engagement and listening and helping it shape it in a co-produced way. And what I really want to focus on is commissioning for outcomes. So rather than necessarily how many staff we need in how many teams, what do we want those outcomes to look like? What are the metrics of success, and how will we know when we've achieved them? So there's a really important focus on commissioning for outcomes. We've got to create that case for change, and I think we've got a lot of the evidence already for the case for change, and that I think does need to be considered by our board in the future. And we need to consider about whether there are actions we need to take in relation to some of our community provision and how it's contracted, but more importantly, what does a community centric service look like for Lancashire and South Cumbria in the future. So the proposed next steps are we do want to take this forward at pace. We want to look at the blueprint and what the 10-year plan's telling us on neighbourhood health models. We want to make sure we've convened our system leaders to get all around the table so we're all understanding the right direction of travel. And then we need to ensure that we've worked together on creating a set of robust options that then we can then properly engage on for the future, including everything we've heard today about what works well, but also where people are telling us we don't think that works and what we're going to do differently. So the recommendations are thinking about the 10-year plan, thinking about the DARS review, and also about the left shift and what ICBs need to do in the future as a strategic commissioner, coming up with a proposal and a robust set of options on community services and taking that forward to align with our strategic intent in our commission intentions on how we're going to do things differently in Lancs and South Cumbria.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Craig. Thoughts, questions? Yeah, lots. Okay. I've got Jim was the first one I saw, then Chris, then Steve Spill.
Okay, a couple of points from me. The first one is on the model. Normally, when you're looking at so many options, there'd be a bit more empirical evidence on this. And at the moment, it feels like we're literally almost going to toss a coin and decide which way to go. I know it's not as simple as that. I know I'm grossly oversimplifying. But it feels like we need to be better informed before we actually make that decision. So it feels like we need to gather a lot more information than we seem to have, or than I've been made aware of at this point in time, because they're quite radically different and there'll be different outcomes to them. So it'd be really important to be properly informed. And just in respect to the proposed next steps, yeah, I think they make sense, but it'd be helpful to see a timescale for them and a bit more information on what each step entails and the anticipated outcome. They're a bit loose at the moment, I think.
Thank you. I'll let Craig come back at the end. Yeah. Chris.
Thank you. Thanks, Craig. So I think this is a really timely piece of work, but I was going to come in and ask Jim's point of, I think it would be good for the timelines. I think there are lots of colleagues that would be involved in lots of these services, and to get that evidence into the business case against the options, but to be really firm on a timeline so that we're being open around that, but really support this direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Steve.
Thank you. And I was going to ask a similar question twice earlier, once during Jane's patient community story and once during Neil's engagement piece. But I'll ask it now anyway. What is, from all of those aspects, what is the ideal community size that we're talking about engaging with and building a population health answer around? So I visited a place yesterday here in Preston. I don't know what the population coverage was. The Barrovian example, I didn't think I'd ever use that word, but the Barrovian example was a very, very small community. So is there an optimum from the point of view engagement building, or is it going to vary? Probably it is going to vary depending on the sort of thing you're looking at.
Shall I bring you in on that, Neil, and then I'll come back to Craig.
So I think some of the really local examples where we're bringing really small areas together is slightly easier. I think with this, what we need to look at is who are the people affected. So who's going to be affected by some of the decisions that we make, and we need to make sure that we don't just engage roughly in that area, but we actually have a really deep understanding of how do we make sure we reach people who we wouldn't normally, to make sure we capture a range of voices of people who'd be involved in or impacted by that decision. And that is harder to do at scale. That's what I was mentioning before about where we've got service design and service change, which is sometimes not a quick process as we would like. We need to just make sure we go about that in a really robust way. But we do have huge amounts of insight. So part of the commissioning intentions workshop I mentioned last week, the majority of the feedback that we capture is about primary and community services. So we're already sat on a wealth of insight of what our communities think, and has been shared by colleagues like Healthwatch and voluntary sector partners. And we need to make sure that we're not just capturing new stuff, but we do what we said before, which is actually listen to the things that people have already told us and make sure we embed that as well, and then really co-produce with people around this is what we've heard, and test it out with some of those people in a range of different ways. I don't know if that's helpful.
No, that does make sense. Andy?
Yeah, just on that exact point though, I think that we do as an ICB need to be really clear what we mean by certain terminology, because even nationally at the moment they're talking about neighbourhoods sometimes being like your local neighbourhood and sometimes it means a population of 150,000 people. They're really, really different things, and I actually think we need to think about communities of interest, so communities that are built around particular points or gather around particular topics or whatever, neighbourhoods where you actually live. Probably we then need to talk about districts, then we need to talk about place, and then we need to talk about wider geography. And I think we just need to be consistent and be really clear. When we talk about this, this is what we mean, because otherwise we're going to get ourselves in loads of loops. And it would be really helpful actually to have probably something come back to the board at some point about when we use this terminology relating to our communities or our neighbourhoods, this is the size of population we're talking about, and this is therefore the way that we will work with them.
I think that's very helpful, actually, and we should make sure we get that down, because I think that is relevant to how we did, to a point I'm going to make in a minute. I've got Julia and I've got Roy.
And just to echo a few points that we've already raised today, but also to highlight the real importance of place here. We've got wealth of feedback. People have told us what they want. We can really use this as a showcase. You know, the community services, what do communities want from their community services? And we have excellent teams in place who can help facilitate that. And then it's also just to echo a point that Andy made earlier, is that whichever way we go with the outcome-based commissioning, we just need to make sure that that funding is ring-fenced, because then it doesn't really matter who it belongs to, because it's about outcomes for our community, designed by our communities.
Thank you, Julie. Roy?
Thank you. Just probably following on there from what Julie said, and it's also about understanding commissioning in place as well, and planning for that. And I know this is part of the planning for the future. What I was going to say though was about the buildings that we have currently. I don't know if we have an understanding of buildings that we actually own within communities, but it's really important that we do, because I found in the past, if we could share services within those buildings, particularly in communities that have got high levels of deprivation, people cannot travel within those communities. They have no ability to be able to travel to long distances to different types of facilities that provide health or provide social care. So if we can find buildings that include those two aspects, both health and social care in the same building, I think it'd be really beneficial to those communities that I've just alluded to. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we do have.
We do have some.
Yeah.
We do have some.
Yeah, we do. Okay. Fine. I'm going to come back to you, Craig, but just an observation of my own. Form always follows function. So I think when to add to the comments that have been made around timing, I think when we can bring it back to a public board, after engagement and discussion and everything, I think it's quite important that what we have is a description of what the services would look like, and then why the model, so that there's that. And I know that that's all in train, but I think for the avoidance of doubt at this point, that's a key part, because I think we can often get hung up with who does what rather than what the outcomes are and how we best deliver those outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks everybody for the really helpful comments. So just to address Jim's point, there is a wealth of evidence that we have and a repository that we've been building in the ICB that's helped shape some of the initial thinking. I'm happy to share that, Jim. I think it's we will need to do exactly what Emma's just said and demonstrate where some of our functional work has been driven from. So picking up Julie's points about listening to a lot of our community telling us, but there's also national and international evidence on best practice for this that we've already been gathering, so that will inform some of our decision making. We did query whether to put a timeline in. Partly there was lots of moving parts nationally with the 10-year health plan, but we envisaged that we will, from today's board, we will start to do that work and bring something back early in the new calendar year, because we think we need the right amount of time to do engagement and discussion and work through the potential options, and we don't want to rush that because it's a really important decision for the future. So I wanted to test that time frame with Bourne, hence me saying that we wouldn't put a preemptive timeline in already. I think on the showcasing elements, I think that's a great suggestion, and I do think we need to get more sophisticated with our financial framework that will underpin any shift from hospitals to community, and what does that mean, and how we don't have necessarily ring-fenced money, but ensuring that we budget in the right way for these services for the future is going to be really important. And to pick up Roy's points on estates, I think we have that in the ICB. I think we could probably go further with our acute colleagues and our local authority partners as well, because there is a lot of joint estate, and I think the estates team are doing that work, but it would be probably having a heat map would be really useful to see where we've maybe got underutilisation of our estate in places, or we need to invest differently for the future. We do that on a primary care footing. I think we can probably do that in a much broader setting.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we are asked, I think, where are we? Note the current contents and approve the proposed next steps. Are we happy with the timing? Early calendar year. I'm looking particularly at provider colleagues. Yes, Chris.
Thanks. I suppose if it's coming back for a decision early down, I think that would be, that's the plan. Yeah, that's
fine. So there's a lot to happen before then.
Happened,
yeah. Aaron?
Very similar. I think there's just something in that if there are going to be changes initiated that have an impact on 26, 27's assumptions, plans, finances, structural change, as early insight as possible for those providers that are engaged would be helpful, but recognise we need to do that properly over the next time period.
So I think the answer is yes, but providers just need to be, but they will be part of the engagement. So, yeah, excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Still with you, Craig, for monitoring of the commissioning intentions plan.
Yes, so a very short report in relation to just updating the board with regards to our commissioning savings plan for Q1. I have brought obviously commission intentions here. The focus is on delivery and ensuring that we deliver the requirements for our overall waste reduction programme for Lancashire and South Cumbria. As I've stated previously, we've been using the Virto programme management system, so this helps us track each and every action, its impact, and what does that mean for our deliverables and also our financial position. We have seen, we always knew that there would be a delay in relation to Q1, and we're starting to see visible savings now in Q2, which I think is really important. And we have commissioning delivery units, and I chair an overall commissioning delivery unit that feeds into our incident management team approach that monitors each of our delivery units and how they are delivering against those saving plans. We're also looking at where we are managing within our budgets, because that's just as important, that we're not overspending and we're managing some of those pressures. So it's a much more rounded position than we've previously had. We've also made significant progress in relation to our commission intentions for 26-27. We've had 4 workshops now that have been very well attended, huge input from our colleagues, which I'm very grateful and thankful for, and that's really started to shape our strategic thinking for the future for 26-27. We've been working very closely with Neil's communication team and our place colleagues in looking at where we need to focus our delivery for the future. There are some areas where there does need to be some laser precision and a spotlight focus, and the teams are considering those now, and also opportunities for where we can manage our demand better in the future. So we're working on a referral management system for Lancashire and South Cumbria that will hopefully help in our management of that sort of system demand going forward. Very much underpinned from a digital perspective about understanding our planning and our financing, and we've dovetailed that. Stephen and I have worked very closely together on making sure that planning is aligning to Commission intentions, and we've outlined a timetable in this paper so you can see what the particular milestones will be going forward. This also reports into our financing and contracting committee, and we've just recently had one where we provide updates where there's more scrutiny done on the individual elements of the delivery plan. So I'm happy to take any comments or questions, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. Comments, questions for Craig? Jim?
Just a quick comment. I think it's on the 19th of September date, but I just want to make sure that we do notify providers early that we will need to be trading within our financial resources on an ongoing basis next year. We seem to have missed the boat the last couple of years in actually making that very explicit statement, and we need to make it very explicit that we can not continue to overtrade.
Thank you. Yep. Debbie.
Thanks, Emma. It's just a quick check, because I know I really welcome the report and the clarity and the regular updates, and also the fact that we're so much more on the front foot, because the earlier that we do this, the better the communication will be, and you can really see how that thinking's permeating through. It was just a quick check, because obviously you've given us a really high level view of process. How we're building in a review of how we commission things this year and any sort of learning from that, and also how we're building in any reflections on what we're buying and how it's performing this year and the outcomes that are being generated. Because the one risk of sort of doing it so early is, do you get the intelligence to understand how well what you've bought this year should be considered when you're approaching next year's commissioning, if that makes sense?
Yeah, and that's a part of the new commissioning process that we've built in, so using that intelligence and data and information at an early stage, and also then informing the draft commission intentions, which will inform the final commission intentions pre the planning stage, which happens obviously from December, normally Christmas Eve, right the way through. So we've built that into the process early, but it's adaptable enough if there is something that we feel should be amended or corrected. We've got an opportunity at a couple of stages through the process to change our commissioning intent based on the intelligence and information that we're receiving. So it's not going to be fixed, and therefore then we are stuck with it, so to speak, for the next year. I think this year we've adopted a much more flexible approach. And actually, when you look at year-on-year trends, there's not huge amounts of difference, if we're honest. There is around the margins, but most of what we know we could predict for the next 3 years. So I do think always a learning process, and we will obviously review it constantly, but I think the scrutiny now given by the Performance and Contracting Committee will really help in us focusing where we need to have our pencils sharpened on some of that work.
And I know that is a key focus of that committee, so that's good. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I think we are asked to receive that report and note it. Final report in this section is the Integrated Care Partnership and Strategy Update.
Thank you, Chair. This is an update on the Integrated Care Partnership. Just to remind everyone, that is a statutory requirement made up of ourselves as one of the founding partner members and our local authorities. It's established under the Health and Care Act 2022. There has been a real focus, especially with the new chair of the partnership, in relation to the business of the partnership and how it can support our wider agenda. And members will recall receiving a paper in November last year that updated on the integrated care strategy, the connection between the integrated care partnership and existing partnership boards, and the role of our voluntary and community and faith sector. What we've heard now since the 10-year plan is that the integrated care partnerships will be dissolved. I just want to be clear that partnership is absolutely a priority of the Integrated Care Board, and integration is a part of our core business. We will still have health and wellbeing boards, so there will absolutely be an interface, but when we're talking about integrated health organisations of the future, there absolutely needs to be a partnership focus through whatever those architects and arrangements are. So whilst we may not have an ICP in the future, I think our role in engaging with our local authorities and wider colleagues, delivering against our integrated strategy and the 10-year health plan is still absolutely critical and a priority focus for us. There's a whole range of work to date, because I don't want to diminish what the Integrated Care Partnership's done. It was a bit slow off the mark due to a whole range of external variables that we've rehearsed before, but I do think there's been huge improvements in connectivity and the partnership approach, and we've worked on the integrated care strategy and really focused on the difference it can make and the benefit it can have. And I think some of that you'll see under section 3 of the report. We've also tried to link it to our existing plans like the joint forward plan, etc., because I think there's been a bit of confusion in why do you have an integrated care strategy and a joint forward plan and then a 10-year health plan. Going forward, we're going to align those so they collide and we'll have a single plan. So that's the intention. But what you can see is some examples in starting well, living well, working well, aging well and dying well that I think start to bring to life what the integrated care strategy has been doing. So whilst there is going to be a change in the future arrangements of formal partnerships under statute, I don't want us to step away from our commitment in relation to delivering services through a partnership vehicle.
No, thank you. It's a good report, and it demonstrates, I think, the focus on the outcomes that have been delivered is a really welcome change, and actually there's an opportunity at that level to share successes for people to learn and adapt as necessary. So I think there's a real value in that. Any other thoughts? No? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we now move on to performance overview and the reporting from committees. Debbie, are you happy to do Finance and Contracting Committee? Because, yeah, excellent, great. I just wanted to check that. So we start with Sheena on Quality and Outcomes Committee.
Thank you very much. So in terms of the meetings, there are 3 meetings that we are reporting our AAA reports from, which were the 7th of May, the 4th of June and the 2nd of July. In relation to those two meetings, I chaired the first 2 and Jane chaired the 3rd one, but I will cover all 3 if that's okay with Jane. So what I'm going to focus on are the alerts from the committees as opposed to the other 2 areas, but I'm assuming that people will have read them. And the first of those alerts was around special educational needs. You'll see that alert that's there. But I'd like to refer people to the SEND paper that's later on the agenda, which probably gives the most up-to-date position in relation to those things. So that covers the 2 alerts that's at the beginning of that first area. And then the other area I just wanted to pull from that was around the work that's been going on in partnership with our colleagues in LSCFT, and Chris may want to comment on this, and we were particularly as a committee looking at ensuring that the National Independent Mental Health Homicide Report in Nottingham, that we had ensuring that that our services that we commission and are provided for our population, that any learning is taken into that and some assurance given on that. And you can see that there was just that understanding about capacity, about intensive teams, and actually thinking about, whilst the work goes on, and a transformation about how do you get this really embedded into community services, looking at meeting the needs of people with mental health needs very differently, and seeing it within where people live their lives in the community, that focus on services for people with psychosis. So that was all I really wanted just to pick out from that one. And I'm going to pause there, Chris, just to bring in anything you wanted to about that particular area. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really important area, and I think we often talk about mental health services, and we think of inpatient units. We don't think about the massive amount of activity that takes place with the community mental health teams until it goes wrong, and we saw that go tragically wrong in Nottingham. So I think this piece of work that we're doing in tandem with the Integrated Care Board and LSCFT on assertive outreach and working through that with our community health teams is so important. So just to reiterate what Sheena said.
Thanks, Chris. So, and then I'd like to just take us into the alert from the meeting of the 4th of June, and that was around the issue about the provision of mechanical thrombectomy, particularly from the ensuring that that was a consistent service for the whole of our population, and the issues that we've already reported to the board about the 24/7 service delivered from our Lancashire Teaching Trust, and that was around a need to ensure that they could provide that 24 service. So it is something that we have been raising through to our specialised commissioning colleagues, because that's who commissions this services, and working alongside them to ensure that we get to that point where that is equity of provision and that really important 24/7 service. So I'm just going to hand you over to Andy, who's just going to update where we're up to on that. Thank you. Mechanical thrombectomy.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just because we talked about it.
Yeah.
Yes. So the update is that even since this morning, I have emailed again to the medical director of the trust, and made it really clear that our position is that we would like it to be ready to go by the 1st of October. The director for commissioning from NHS England's strategic commissioning team, Simon Kendall, has responded to say that he would support that position, but recognises the pressure on the trust, and hopefully things will definitely be in, well, we know that things will be in place by 1st of February. Our hope is that things will be in place by 1st of October, and we'll be working with the trust to get that in place as soon as possible.
Thank you. So I think it's important just to, if we go back to some of our theme through today, it's really important to see that actually there is how our governance processes work in terms of if things come through for assurance to the board, that we as a board are seeing that improvement and moving forward rather than it just being alert there. So I think that's just to really illustrate that progress.
Can I just check on that then? So what is, picking up on your point then, Sheena, how will that feedback? You'll get a response back at the next quality committee, will you?
Yes, we have, as you know, been taking this through the IAG process as well, and I'm just trying to think of what the acronym is. It's the assurance group, the
intensive, probably.
Yeah, thank you. Which is the process that we've talked about earlier in the board meeting. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I just wanted to pick out the final area was on our meeting on the 2nd of July, which was the one that Jane chaired, and there was 2 alerts there relating to medicines optimisation, where we're just making sure that we're clear on the quick target that's there, and also to ensure that we have a good oversight in about the quality aspects of the work we're doing about all age continuing care. So that was all I really wanted to pick up. Thank you very much.
Yes, Julie.
Chair Sheena, a reflection really. I distinctly recall having the same assurance given that the service would be active from July this year at a previous board meeting, and I suppose it's just that reflection that as Jane pointed out, we've got a lot of vacancies in our area, and that this is an epitome of this, isn't it? It's not that the service provider is lacking in what they're delivering, it's that they haven't got the staffing to deliver it, isn't it? And it's just highlighting maybe that this is a real area of challenge as an ICB, is when a service falls short, at what point and where does our limitation end for managing?
Really good point.
So just to be clear, Julie was referring to the item on mechanical thrombectomy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was just going to come in on that point actually, because I think what would be helpful, Andy, because I think when we're talking about these dates, because there has been a recruitment in LTH around this, and so part of our actions through the IAG process and through the process that Sheena's talked about is to make sure we're following this up and making sure that these things are in place. So there has been recruitment. There is a plan to get, so the date, whether it's sort of earlier or later, there is a date to say when this is going to be in place, but that doesn't mean there's nothing in place around the mitigation in between. So it'd be helpful, Andy, I think, if you could just say what is happening to make sure that we're mitigating the risks whilst we're waiting for the full, because what we're talking about is a full 24/7 service to be in place by that date, but that doesn't mean there's nothing around that. So there have been some moves, is my understanding, Andy.
Yes, so there are two things in place. The first is that at the moment there's an agreement between the North West that where we can, we transfer patients to other centres when the 24/7 care is not available. That hasn't always worked because those centres have also been under pressure. But recruitment has now been done at LTH for the interventional radiologists that they needed to be able to fulfil the rota requirements. That consultant's going to take a little bit of time to move posts and come into LTH. And in the meantime, the strategic commissioning team at Region are working with LTH and the Northern Care Alliance in Manchester and the Walton Centre in Liverpool to assure us that as far as possible, and remember we're the second best performing region outside, so after London, the North West is the second best performing region in the country around mechanical thrombectomy. So although we're not doing as we would want to do compared to other regions, we're still doing significantly better. It's a national problem, but we're about as good as we can, or as safe as we can be at the moment with the complexities of recruitment and staffing. So I guess what we're saying is the rota's nearly full and we're aiming to get it in place for LTH 24/7 care as soon as possible. In the meantime, there is a much better working relationship in place, and it has been a bit fraught previously, but it's much better between Manchester, Liverpool and ourselves to make sure that we can provide as safe a care as we can whilst we get the staffing in place. And there's a clear commissioning framework in place for that to happen now.
Thanks, Andy. I can see Craig.
Yeah, just to add to Andy and Sam's point about assurance, as the Specialist Commissioning Lead Commissioner with the region, I've written to the Chief Exec of LTH regarding those timelines. So that will be followed up, and Andy's having medical director to medical director conversations more informally. I just want to say, though, LTH does a significant number of thrombectomy cases. This is about the out-of-hours element for 24/7, which is still important, but I wouldn't want to leave the impression that LTH is not doing a good job in this space, because compared to the other trusts, they see a significant larger number, and I think it's a very valued service. What we're trying to do is make sure we've got parity for a 24/7 service. So just, I don't want people to leave thinking that this is not a good service, because that's not what we're saying.
Thank you, Craig. Aaron.
Yeah, thanks, Jet. It's to Julie's point. So I think that's really well made. There are a number of services, I think, particularly around acute providers, where workforce fragility is a problem. Either creates issues with outcomes and experience of patients and or really high costs to try and run those services. So we have a programme of work around fragile services. You'll have heard some of that with updates around vascular and orthodontics, designed to work as a group of providers, how we get a more sustainable solution. Stroke sits in that category. So outside of the 24/7 thrombectomy, there's also the work of the ICNDN and working with place and groups of providers around stroke improvement. But I think one of the things we'd need to think about in the future is we probably need to think more around that workforce and that innovation of different pathways, because more and more of these are national issues of really difficult to recruit to specialties. And I know that's being picked up as part of the commissioning intentions with the broader acute configuration work, but I'll just make that point, Chair.
Thank you. Useful conversation. Is that, yeah. Can I just raise one question, and it's clarity really. In the 2nd of July, you clearly had reports on medicines optimisation and all age continuing care, and I know that you're going to get, I'm looking at the balance between what Finance and Contracting Committee does and what you do in terms of the very significant quips in both those areas. And I think we're very clear on all age continuing care that you're going to be looking at the quality aspect. If I read the escalation on medicines optimisation, you could think that was more about saying there's a risk in delivery. I'm not sure that's an acceptable position. What we need to be is that the Quality Committee make sure that when they deliver, there are no quality impacts, and Finance and Contracting check the delivery. So I just wanted to be clear about that and make sure that that's...
Yeah. I'm going to pass you over to Jane, because I was actually on annual leave at that meeting, so I don't have the nuances of the conversation that took place. Thank you, Jane.
Yeah, it's a good question, Emma. from what I remember, we actually referred that to the Finance and Contracting Committee, but we captured it as an alert because it felt like we couldn't just hear that and not alert it to the board, even though it wasn't particularly a risk around the quality of that service, but it was flagged up in the report to the committee that there was a financial risk.
Right.
So it's exactly your point. This probably could have, I don't know how we write it, but that's the issue. So we are alerting because we heard it and felt that the board needed to know, and we also referred it to the Finance Committee, but it's not particularly about the quality of that service.
That's good to know. No, I just think it's very important that we're absolutely rigorous about which committee assesses in which way, so that we get the delivery and the quality.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Just to sort of close the loop on that, we actually had a meeting today between Chair of Finance and Performance and myself, and also Chair of Audit, because we just wanted to go around the loop on all age continuing care, just to make sure we were absolutely clear what the assurance processes were in relation to those three parts of our governance picture or processes, and that was a really useful outcome of that meeting. I don't know if any of my colleagues want to add to anything to that. Steve, I go to Chair of Finance, is actually not here, but Jim was there.
No, I think what you said is absolutely right. We want to make sure that nothing falls between the cracks on all age continuing care, and I think we're nearly there, but we're not quite there yet. But we're going to have through Sam or Steve, we're not quite sure yet. We're going to try and get another meeting with Nancy Part to make sure that what we need, it comes to our committees. At the moment, we've got a single report that seems to come to all committees, and we're trying to get it tailored for each one without creating undue extra work, that is.
Excellent. Thank you. Good. Thank you very much. Okay, so Steve has had to leave because he has another board meeting. So Debbie's going to give us the Finance and Contracting Committee report.
Thanks, Emma. So there's two AAAs available for finance and contracting, one from the 20th of May and one from the 17th of June. So I'll just focus on the areas of alert just for attention, and I'm conscious that the areas of alert in many respects are similar across those two meetings. So rather than covering everything on 20th of May, I'll sort of update and draw attention to the subsequent updates on the 17th of June. What I also won't do is focus on sort of financial performance, because I'm conscious that Stephen's got the month 4 finance report, which gives an updated position, so month 3, getting ahead of myself. So rather than giving you sort of a retrospective view, it's probably more helpful for Stephen to give you the current view. So in terms of 20th of May, just draw attention to the digital and data strategy, which was reviewed and an update received. So the committee reviewed the content and had a particular focus on the risks to delivery given the substantial financial challenges that are being faced by the ICB. I think the conversation there was that particularly with this strategy, it's important not to just focus on the costs, it's important to look at the benefit, and that digital and data is absolutely key to both efficiencies but also transformation within the system, and that needs to be considered particularly keenly in this area when investment decisions are taken moving forward because of the potential risks. The other aspect to draw out from that May meeting is around all age continuing care under advise. So there was a request for the committee to retrospectively approve commitments in the area totaling 92 million, which wasn't approved. So there was an action there for the scheme of delegation to be looked at, just so that rather than being asked retrospectively, if there was an opportunity to agree ahead of that it could then be considered. So that's been taken forward in terms of future considerations. Moving us on to the 17th of June meeting, so all age continuing care is the first area of alert. So we received and reviewed and assured against the current delivery position. So there's an item at each meeting, pretty much picking up on the conversation and point that Jim just raised around all age continuing care because of the areas of risk and the significance of the efficiencies that need to be achieved in that area. So the latest position against it was that we noted that there's a reduction in spend run rate and significant drop in eligibility conversion rate. However, there is a gap to target remaining of 3.8 million, so it does remain a keen area of focus both for the committee in terms of assurance and obviously for the board as well, given its significance. Waste reduction programme update. The latest position against the 150.6 million target was that can be achieved in terms of the in-year savings. However, there's 44.6 million in mitigations that have to be delivered, and there's areas of risk around that, which will remain a keen focus. So it's important that the committee supports the board to make sure that those savings are delivered and to assure against the approach that's in place so that the mitigations are delivered by year end, and that also that the savings are recurrent where possible, so that it's a sustainable approach moving forward. Contracting, there was a conversation and a review of contracting performance at both the May meeting and also an update to the standard report that's been introduced that came to the June committee meeting, which was very much welcomed. So Craig and the team have provided additional assurance and additional information in a new report so that the committee can offer board assurance on a monthly meeting basis of how those contracts are performing. And there's a strengthening in the reporting there around the committee being able to understand variances on a monthly basis, so that if there is anything that's critical or high risk, we can support the board being aware of that so action could be taken. And then the final one against that month's plan, just to draw out for attention, is we both approved the green plan for 25-30, and there's a link there for board members just to be able to review that, and we also welcomed the quality of the plan and the ongoing commitment to achieving those targets corporately. And then under Assure, the joint capital resource use plan was approved by the committee and recommended for approval by the board. So just to flag that that's been shared, but that is a recommendation I think that we'd need to minute, given it's come through from the committee.
Thank you very much. Deb.
Thank you. If I could just for clarity, from the 20th of May, where it makes reference to commitments retrospectively being approved to the value of 92 million, that was in relation to packages of care that are over a certain limit. It's circa 300,000. When we did review the scheme of delegation, that report shouldn't have actually been for recommendation. It should have been for information. The scheme of delegation allows executive colleagues very clearly to agree those packages. So the scheme of delegation doesn't therefore need reviewing. And we did take that back through the committee, but obviously that hasn't been reflected in the report. So to clarify that.
No, but it's good that it got picked up by the committee and was addressed, so thank you. Roy.
It's the same subject. Sorry, it was the same subject, Chair. Thank you. When I read it, I thought I was a bit surprised, quite frankly, to see 92 million being asked to be funded retrospectively. Given that's nearly a fifth of the budget, I hear the response from Deb there, but I just wonder how it's got to that figure. It's a significant figure, you know, and if it's just coming back as a figure of 92 million to the committee, why wasn't it highlighted earlier when it was reaching, you know, those sort of levels?
From my memory, Roy, this was in relation to high cost packages of care. So some of those packages of care may be up to a certain, you know, well above £300,000. I can't really comment on the detail.
Stephen.
Yeah, we discussed this, and I suppose the committee felt uncomfortable being brought retrospective information, and we've since been away and reviewed the terms of reference, that the SFIs about where this should go. Because what we can't have, if this is a person that needs a package, we can't then wait for an audit finance committee a month later to approve this. So it's a bit unsatisfactory that we're bringing it there for information. I think we've worked through it. It will have to come for information, unfortunately. There's no other way of managing that. The actual sign off of the packages is actually done through there's a panel in there now that meets, and it's signed off through that process. It's effectively going for information.
Sounds like it sounds like we've closed the loop. Yeah.
Following the meeting, that committee, there was a subsequent meeting where we've resolved it.
Fine. Okay. So I think yeah. Thank you. Okay. questions on Finance and Contracting Committee? No. I mean, clearly the focus now is on delivery against plan, and which is not entirely straightforward for an ICB because so much of the data comes quite in arrears. So I know that there's a real focus on trying to get leading indicators so that we've really got a sense of where we are so that we can address. So thank you very much. It was a big committee to do at short notice. Thank you. Okay, now we have North West Specialised Committee. Commissioning, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. So the North West Specialised Commissioning Committee has met. As you can see, there is an alert there. Unfortunately, we did not receive any bids for the adult critical care transport service, which was very disappointing. This is obviously a key provision that's required, so we're now going back to speak to those that had expressed an interest to see whether or not there is something we can do about that, and if not, what are the options for us and how will we potentially manage and mitigate the risks. So that is being done by that committee, but obviously important for our board to know. Equally, advising on the fact that the transfer specialist commissioning staff has been paused. There will be a full transfer in April 26, but it will now be much more encompassing of Section 7A vaccinations, as well as health and justice, and also our specialised commissioning, which is now increased in number. There is a fancy new title for what the hub will look like, but they want all of the hub services to be in one place in a region, and obviously we'd already agreed to host 2 of those. So there needs to be further work on the staff that will be transferred into us. This will not be a delegation now because it will be a formal transfer of roles and responsibilities. I will need to bring back to board the implications of that, the values, because it will impact on SFIs, etc. And I'll ensure that that's done in due course. And then further advice, was on a provider selection process is being undertaken for our Northwest complex termination of pregnancy, and that's been a very well rehearsed and detailed discussion led by Dr. Ruth Hussey. So that's something that we'll need to bring back on the future options, because again there's no resolution to that at this moment in time.
Thank you, Craig. Any questions? No. The adult critical care service, does this committee meet sufficiently frequently to... Yeah, okay, so it's all under hand. Great, excellent, good. Jim, Shaping Care Together.
Thank you. We had the first public meeting in effect, or meeting in public rather than a public meeting, on the 4th of July. It was a very good session where we agreed to put the business case out to consultation, so that's now moving forward. During the consultation period, there's going to be at least 28 consultation events, so it's going to be it's a 13-week period, so there's a lot of events going to take place. And the final business case we anticipate being produced in spring 2026. But there's nothing really to add to the note. I think the note is pretty self-explanatory, and it's at this point in time it's moving forward very effectively, I think.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Jim? No? Okay. Excellent. So let's now move to the integrated performance report. Just before I bring you in, Asim, I think, Craig, you're going to address one of the questions. Is that right? Yes. Thank you.
Sorry, yes, Chair. So we had a question from a member of the public that relates to the National Urgent Emergency Care Plan for 25-26 and with regarding our acute trusts having a signed off plan ready for winter, and the 7 priorities where a minimum of 5 should be delivered against, and would the ICB insisting on trusts adhere to and monitoring this as a directive. I think we've got a very good arrangement for our UEC and winter planning, and I don't think there needs to be any direction given to our acute colleagues. They're absolutely on board with this. We have submitted through our 4 acute trusts and the mental health trust and the ICB plan our winter assurance template that was submitted on the 21st of July. I am our winter director, as they like to have new titles for us, so I will be bringing updates to our executive committee and board, and we've outlined with the company secretary a series of dates where that will be reported to. There will be a winter stress test winter plan event that all of our acute providers and mental health trust and ICB will participate in, and the ICB will be expected to sign off that sign off the winter plan as a part of our board assurance to NHS England, which again has already been timetabled in. And from October, during the winter period, and this year, as you remember, I finished reporting in March, we will ensure that we have the variety of surveillance mechanisms in place, looking at any early warning signs of surge and winter planning, or where we need to mobilise our contingencies. So hopefully that gives assurance that we will be fully participating in the urgent emergency care plan as outlined by NHS England.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Craig. Asim.
Thank you, Chair. The integrated performance report, as colleagues are aware, covers quite a number of domains. So I'm not intending to go through it in any detail. Just to remind the board, at the last meeting I covered in quite a bit of detail the increase in pressure and the demand from the pandemic, and we continue to see that across all the domains, whether that's UEC, diagnostics or primary care. The report and the performance metrics remain consistent from the previous report. So we've seen in urgent and emergency care, there's been an improvement from the previous month. We currently rank 12 out of 42 ICBs for 4-hour performance. 12-hour performance is an improving position, and ambulance category 2 responses is also an improving position. Diagnostic performance, which we covered quite in detail last time around, especially around community diagnostic, pleased to say our 4 acute providers, again, we've seen an improving position. It can't be said about the independent providers, but overall, we're seeing a positive trajectory there. Mental health, again, pleased to say out of area placements, we now reduced to 2 patients that are receiving inappropriate out of area placement, just to stress. This is a reduction from 30 that we saw in February. In elective care, the waiting list is quite static. It's still 240,600, which is double what we had in the pandemic. We still have, unfortunately, 62-week or more waiters. Half of them waiters are within our gynecology services. There also continues to be significant pressure in our children and young development waiting list, specifically in neurodevelopment pathways. Also long waiting times in children and young people services in maxillofacial surgery, paediatric neurodisability, and ear, nose and throat. And this is covered within the acute performance reports. I'm not going to duplicate that here. On a positive note, we have seen sort of our waiting list for speech and language therapy within Lancashire and South Cumbria Foundation Trust, where it was 472 children were waiting over 52 weeks back in March 24. 12 months fast forward, and we have now 0 children waiting in that service. And as we look at strategic commissioning, I think it's important to understand what that success criteria is. And in the report, it talks about a balanced system, which doesn't mean much, but what it is a whole system commissioning approach that looks at sort of universal, targeted, prevented models around proactive care. So, for example, in Highburn, and I've covered this previously, a pilot was launched in December 22, which was around a drop-in type service. And at that time, there were many 40-week plus waiters, and they reduced that to 0. And that model has now been replicated in Preston and West Lancashire. So some real good learning there around innovative approaches, strategic commissioning by bringing multidisciplinary partners here. One area I think we have seen, if we look at the report since February, we have seen deterioration. It's not significant deterioration, but overall we're seeing in cancer, we are not meeting any of our 3 standards. That's faster diagnosis, 31-day standards, and 62-day standard. So we have seen slight deterioration here.
These standards gets monitored by our acute hospitals, and there's a lot of details around what's causing that, whether that's some of the workforce fragility Aaron has mentioned before. There's some specific around breast cancer surgery. So there's a lot of discussions here with the Cancer Alliance. I don't want to duplicate that. But what I do want to focus on is what the ICB will be responsible for when it comes to cancer. So there is, within the NHS oversight framework, the proportion of cancers diagnosed as stage 1 and 2. That will be monitored at an ICB level. At an acute level, the continuation of 62-day performance and 28-day performance, 31-day performance has been dropped. So what does it look like for Lancashire and South Cumbria when we look at early diagnosis? It doesn't look positive. The cancer incidence in Lancashire is higher than nationally, so we need to look at that from a context when we look at the other metrics. So we have a significantly lower proportion of patients presenting at an early stage than nationally. So our current staging data, stage 1 and stage 2 performance is 54.2%, which puts us in the bottom quartile nationally. And what our data also tells us, that when we look at the most disadvantaged communities, experience is even poorer. So higher cancer incidence, lower rates of screening, fewer cancer diagnosed at stages 1 and 2, and higher rates of mortality from cancer. And within the report, there's some examples. So early diagnosis of lung cancer is 39%, lower than a national average, and I can go on. Pancreatic cancer and prostate cancer is the lowest in the country, diagnosed as stage 1 and 2. There is a lot of good work happening, and we've already seen in the ICP report, and we'll also see in Debbie's report coming around equality, inclusion and diversity around the work that's happening around targeted lung cancer screening. But there's a lot more to do here, and this is where we need to focus our attention when we talk about sickness to prevention. So I think there's a lot of triangulation. In Craig's report, we've already seen that there is a signal in the commissioning intention to invest more around early diagnosis of cancers. And there's a number of initiatives that I've already mentioned. One to sort of reference, because it's also mentioned in the Integrated Care Partnership, the work Spring North are doing, sort of bringing all of our different voluntary sector, charity, faith providers, and some real positives. Since December 2024, they've engaged with 183,000 people, and real positive feedback. So when sort of David was asking about people's voices, this is what we need to hear around the reasons why people are not engaging or awareness. And we heard that in the sort of Poverty Truth Commission sort of presentation as well. And in a similar way, and last thing before I finish, I'm mindful of time, is Sakti raised a point around hypertension. And I know Andy Knox has spoken about this previously, but there is a sort of figure in the report. And again, this will be as part of our new NHS oversight framework, which will be ICB measure, where we are currently performing 67.6% around monitoring hypertension against target. But what we see is significant variation. We see significant variation around cancer screening. We see significant variation around hypertension management. And this is important because it prevents strokes, heart disease, kidney failure, and some just figures to end with. UCL Partners did a piece of work with us, our ICB in June 24. 37,000 people did not have a recent blood pressure reading. 94,000 with hypertension were not treated with appropriate blood pressure sort of treatments. And if we did, it could have prevented 215 heart attacks, 321 strokes, and 172 lives. So this is why this kind of metrics are really important. And I think, Aaron, you've said previously, what we measure gets done. And I think this is going to get measured. And I think just to end, what we've heard today around community voice, having culturally sensitive services, that's going to be critical to turn the dial on these things, because this is not about coming in for treatment, it's about preventing and accessing these individuals. And I can talk quite a lot in detail around this. But I think rightly so, our focus should be moving in this area, and that is reiterated in the long-term plan and in the new NHS oversight framework. So I'll leave it there, but happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. As always, a really insightful area. Thank you. Questions? Yes, I've got Jim, and then I've got Sam, and then and Andy. We're going to overrun. Is that, are people okay if we, because I don't think there's anything we wouldn't have wanted to say, but we're not going to finish by 4. Is that okay? Yep, fine.
I will be quick then. Thank you for that, Asim. And I'm really pleased you talked about the cancer services, because that was, reading the paper, that was a concern for me. So it was good to hear what you were saying there. And it's very difficult not to want to home in on a whole series of indicators, but I'm going to mention 2 in particular that I would be interested to know a little bit more about. One is the virtual wards. The occupancy level is really very low, and given that we are constantly talking about the difficulty of beds and not having enough beds, and we've got all these unused facilities. I know they're virtual, but that's not particularly good. It doesn't look good, basically, and we need to find a way of making greater use of what is potentially a very good facility. And the other one is the excess of 12-hour waits. We're still close to 7% of patients going into A&E waiting over 12 hours, which is it's verging on disgraceful, really. We said we would stop this over 12 months ago, and we haven't. And I'm looking at Craig, because that was in one of our kind of commitments. We had these commitments. And it feels like we need to kind of revisit this and just see where we're at on this, because I wouldn't say it was almost a pledge. It was almost kind of the board's pledge to do things around A&E, one of which was to have no corridor waits, another was to have no 12-hour waits or minimise 12-hour waits, and we don't seem to be making a lot of progress on that.
Can I bring you in, or Craig, and then I think I've got Sam. Yeah.
Yeah, so on the virtual wards, we can bring a report back. There is a huge amount of activity, and it's probably, I won't do it justice now without the detail, but I can bring back what the improvement plan looks like. In relation to UEC, you're right, we did make a commitment that we would work towards zero corridor care and a reduction in 12-hour waits. I think we are seeing a reduction in 12-hour waits, but we've got to balance that with an increased demand through the front door. So we've been doing a number of interventions, especially with NWAS, about call before convey and hear and treat and see and treat. However, it's not stemmed some of the flow into the department. Flow is better, but there is still increased complexity. So for as much as we were seeing improvement, it's been counterbalanced with some significant challenges that our acute colleagues are now experiencing. We have UEC improvement plans for each of the providers that we're working on, and 12-hour waits is one of the things that we have to report on now. So there will be more dedicated focus on it. It is going in the right direction, not as fast as we would like it to, but it is a balance with our 4-hour wait targets, as well as managing our out-of-area placements, for example. So it is tricky to get it all in improvement in the right way.
It's just to make a point really about dashboards and how we use them as a board, because the danger is that we look around a median and we go, yay, every time we go slightly up, and then every time we go down. And I think we had a really brilliant board development session with David Fillingham and Ailsa Brotherton around taking the improvement approach. And I think if we're going to really see the improvements that we need to see in cancer waiting times, in hypertension, in A&E wait times, in all of the things that we've highlighted today are an issue, we can't afford to just monitor the ups and downs. We've got to think about fundamentally what needs to change, what's the improvement approach we're going to take, what is the intervention, and then measure the progress from the intervention to see whether or not it's working. And I think the problem is in the NHS, again and again, we go around the same loops and we kind of ooh and ah at different bits along a dashboard, rather than taking an interventional improvement approach, which actually drives the change that we need to see across the system. And I think where we're seeing the highlight reports from ASIM, these are really, really significant bits of data for our population, and we would do well to then say, and therefore, what is the improvement action we're taking, and how will we know that we've seen the necessary outcome, and by when? And I think we just need to get a little bit tighter on that bit of governance that allows us to drive that real long-term change for our population.
Thank you, Andy. Sam.
Yeah, and just very briefly, not for a question, not for an answer, but just I suppose where my head is with this is, you know, we've got some very rich data, and Asim's talked about understanding the population needs and understanding that why it is different and what is happening in each population. We've also got some themes going across, and I'm thinking particularly about women's network and hubs, and thinking about gynecology waiting lists and breast cancers. You know, there's some themes in here that, and when we use that information, this is where, you know, over time this will get more and more sophisticated. In the operating model we're envisaging going forward, how we're going to work. But even for this year, we need to use the rich data we've got, and this needs to be driven into the commissioning intention work and then into the commissioning work that you're going to see. So rather than individual reports back on different bits of it, I think we need to see this through the commissioning intention work about how we're using the data to then drive the right work and come back and show you how we're addressing some of those things. And I think that will be the way we'll do this.
Thank you. David, very briefly.
Just, I would say that this is probably the most important part of the work that we do for members of the public. You know, this is where we tell them we're not doing so well here, and this is the action that we're taking. And I think, you know, most of the people that we speak to, they want the answer to this question. So if we could get to a place where we're saying this is the challenge that we're faced with, and this is our, you know, performance or underperformance, and therefore we're doing A, B, and C, I think that's that's closing the loop that I think the members of the public deserve.
Thank you. I think that's helpful. Can we put that down as an action then, so that we work? Probably it's Andy and Asim. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Finance.
Yeah. Thank you. And I'll try and be very brief. So this was the position at month 3. It went through Finance Committee or Finance and Contracts Committee last week and had a really detailed discussion around it. So I'll just give you the highlights. So at month 3, we are £12.8 million behind plan. That's driven by the provider position, which is largely where they're on unidentified CIP, the shortfall on their SIPs. The ICB position were on plan. I'll probably focus going forward just on the ICB position, but we'll take questions on the provider one. I'll focus on what the risks are, just given time. So the risks in particular to the ICB, it's the scale of the savings programme, 142 million. As matters currently stand, we've got £15 million of that unidentified, and we've got £44 million in high risk we've still got to achieve. We have got some pressure coming through on the independent sector in the first 3 months, whilst we try to get activity management plans in place. We're confident we can hold that position. We'd like to bring it down, but as a minimum, we'd like to hold it. And then the final area, and then I'll open it to questions, all-age continuing care. We've had a pressure come through from the prior year of 7 million on all-age continuing care. That relates to some assessments that were effectively delayed or deferred in March and have come through in this financial year. So I appreciate I've cantered through that, Chair, but I am conscious of time.
Thank you very much. That opens for questions. Any questions on this? I mean, it is an area of there is an area of risk. I think as the Finance and Contracting Committee have highlighted, the focus is all on delivery, but also the plans, and I think we are cognizant of the quite high level of risk that we have. But I do commend the amount of work that has gone into doing this, and I'm also quite keen that it's the other thing that is important is that there is this balance between the Finance Committee looking at the results of it and the Quality Committee making sure that the quality maintains high. Thank you. Okay, so our next item is Audit Committee Escalation and Assurance Report.
Thank you, Chairman. This is almost a rerun of the minutes of the board meeting that we talked about earlier. The Audit Committee preceded the extraordinary board meeting. Same comments were made, basically, so I'm not going to go through them in any great detail. There's one referring to the external auditor's letter and the comments he made about the value for money study, and the other's about the CHC ADAM system, which is Community Healthcare ADAM system. Stephen Downs updated us yesterday at the Audit Committee yesterday on where we're at on that. I think there's still a little bit more work to do on that, but things are not as bad as they were, but they're not where we would really like them to be at this point in time.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. I'm not seeing hands, so I'm going to move on to the Joint Capital Resource Plan. Stephen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This went through the Finance Committee, so it's been discussed in detail. This is a statutory requirement to produce this. Apologies for the format. It's actually an NHS England format where you're given boxes to put things in, and it's very prescriptive over the areas we've got to cover, but it is a requirement to publish this each year. So it's a position on the system. So I should expect the majority of the capital spent by the providers. But again, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. And Finance and Contracting Committee recommend it for approval.
We did. I think we asked for an update to come back in 3 months' time, sort of recalling. And I think the other point from memory was that we were really keen to see all the funding spent. I think there'd been some under delivery, hadn't there? So to keep a closer eye on it in year, just so that all the funding's maximised.
Thank you, Debbie. Yeah. Happy to approve? Oh, sorry. Yes.
If you can just add to Debbie's point, we're particularly keen to see the IT funding spent, including the money that was in effect carried forward from last year, because for the point Debbie made earlier, it's so important to invest in the IT to get the transformation we want. So just to mention it here, because it didn't happen last year.
No, important. Thank you. Yep. Happy to approve that. Thank you, and thanks to Finance and Contracting Committee for their scrutiny. SEND, Special Educational Needs and Disabilities Update. Craig.
Yes, I'm presenting this on behalf of Catherine Lord, our Acting Director of Nursing, who couldn't be here. So this is a update report just to remind board members that we did bring a full report in March regarding the findings of the Lancashire SEND inspection December 24, the Priority Action Plan and areas for improvement. I'm pleased to say that that Priority Action Plan, that's called PAP, has now been signed off and published, and an independently chaired improvement board has also been established. What you'll see, and I'm going to take the paper as read, is that we've given an update on inspections. There's been further inspections at Westmorland and Furness, and one is currently underway at Cumberland. We have also updated at the request, and Asim also pointed this out in the performance report, on our neurodivergent pathway and what has been established in relation to the oversight of the pathway in the form of a neurodivergent pathway programme board. This is to look at our future arrangements, and we have secured some investment that's been directed to Blackpool Teaching Hospital in the short term. However, we do need to look at long-term solutions for this. There's been 5 work streams established with membership from all of the partners across the footprint, with key objectives outlined, and that's under section 2.8 of the report. The report also includes an update on our education healthcare plans and some of the challenges that our SEND team is required to do as a part of a statutory role in being a critical partner in the SEND agenda. And I just want to emphasise that we are absolutely committed to improving the offer for our children with special education needs, and this is one of our areas we do need to make sure that we support so they can deliver their statutory requirements. There's elements of emerging risks that are being included that are currently being considered as a part, as I said, of our the future of our autism pathway, and we'll be working to look at that for a commission intention for 26-27. So I'll leave it there, Chair, and I'm happy to take any comments or questions on the report.
Thank you, Craig. Questions? Yes, Sheena.
I don't have any questions, but just to really, it's clearly this is a key area of our statutory responsibilities as an ICB, and it is something that we do look at the Quality Committee. Clearly, we've had the report in March, and this is really important about the so what are we doing around seeing that improvement that we need to see across our offer and responding to the children and young people in our population. So I think it's one that we want to we'll obviously do that oversight through the Quality Committee, but I think it's something that we should make sure that we regularly report, probably through the Quality Committee, back to the board in order to make sure we are making progress with our partners on this agenda. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Sheena. I think that's very helpful. Any other thoughts? No, we're just being asked to note this report, so thank you. The next report is the Fit and Proper Person Test annual submission, which is something that has to be done each year. And I'm very grateful to Deb and her team for running the process and for giving me the relevant assurances. So I think this is, I'm asking you to note the completion and submission, which is in line with NHSE requirements. 24, Equality, Diversity, Inclusion Report. I think you're going to take these two together, aren't you? Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Chair. I'm going to take 24A and B together. I think, first of all, just to say and to put it into context again, this is one of our 7 priorities in the People Plan. It's equality, diversity and inclusion for our people. I think it's important that these 2 items are not seen as standalone documents. I think everything we've said throughout the meeting more or less dovetails into what I'm going to present now. I also think it's important to note the context in terms of our local people that we serve. In Lancashire and South Cumbria, we have areas that are most deprived when you compare them to other areas in England, so that's significantly high. I think it's important that we recognise, and that's included in this report, the voices of our people, which we've talked about, and also not only the visible differences, but other areas of protected characteristics, like thinking about people with mental health needs, neurodiversity, learning disability, and also because of our deprivation, there are groups that you wouldn't normally think about in terms of impact, like white men and their health needs. So I just wanted to say that in the context of everything we've been talking about today. So in terms of, I'll take the paper as read, and just the paper is a requirement, a statutory requirement under the Equalities Act, and our public sector equalities duty is to produce and publish this paper. So I'm seeking board approval around this. You will also note that included in the equality annual report is our equality standards, delivery standards report, which is for it's called EDS 22, and that's part of the update that I'll be giving today. So the report actually covers not only us as an ICB, but the system. It has been considered and as part of the belonging group, which is the system EDI group, and they've contributed to what it contains. And I think, I'm wondering if it's helpful if I just pick out some areas of progress and maybe some areas that we need to think about in terms of development. So some of the thing that we did last year, which was really good, is stand up our staff networks. And not only have we done that in the ICB, but across our providers. So locally, in terms of the ICB, we have 4 staff networks that we've set up, and we're making really good progress, and it's all contained in the report. We've got exec sponsors, which are again around this table, and one thing we set up for the network chairs across the whole system is some leadership development, which was supported by NHS England. So we ran that last year. One of the other areas of focus is anti-racism, and actually our provider organisations have done really well in that area. North West BAME Assembly introduced an anti-racism framework, which has a 3-stage accreditation scheme, and a number of our providers have been successful in achieving accreditation in that, under that scheme. As an ICB, we are beginning our process around that. We've identified our executive anti-racism sponsor, which is Andy, and we are aiming to submit our bronze submission for bronze next year, hopefully. And I suppose the other information that is positive to note is the progress we're making around workforce demographics and our recording under ESR. There's still a lot more to go, but we have seen a slight increase since the last annual report. So a couple of areas to pick up and maybe have a discussion around in terms of improvement. And I particularly want to make reference to the EDS 22 and the areas that we've measured around our equality performance. And I know that we've heard some of it in terms of our performance metrics today. But one of the areas that we want to is domain 1. And what we particularly focused on is some of the work that we've done around our maternity services and maternity voices. And we've worked with Health Watch around that and other community partners. And I think that's an area, even as an ICB last year, we set an improvement metrics around that as a board for EDI. So that might be something that we might want to think about, and maybe Andy might want to talk about that in terms of where we are with that. And then there's, domain 2 around our health and well-being and leadership. And I think there's a number of factors that we need to take into account here, but there's an issue around representation, making sure that we do represent as a workforce our local population in all the protected characteristics. And again, there's something around us going through organisational change and not losing sight of this and being very intentional around our actions to address some of the health and workforce inequalities that the report highlights. I'll stop there, and I don't know whether, Andy, if you want to say anything.
Andy?
It's all right if I just make a couple of comments. Debbie's kindly set me up on two really important issues in the paper, I think, that I also just want to comment on. The first is the work around maternity, and I really want to commend our maternity network for the phenomenal work that they've done over the last 12 to 18 months around positive recruitment. So we've seen our workforce, which was not at all representative of the communities that we serve, become much more representative of the communities that we serve. There's been a really, really positive drive, particularly for midwives from our most disadvantaged communities and from global majority backgrounds, and that has been phenomenal. And what we know is that when our workforce, particularly midwives, look like people from our populations, outcomes for women are significantly improved. So it's not just, we should do something because it's a nice thing to do. It genuinely makes a difference to the quality of care, and they've done a phenomenal piece of work in really, really getting to positive recruitment. And what it's actually led to, let me give you an example, is at LTH, for example, we have seen a massive decrease in postpartum hemorrhage for women from global majority backgrounds. It's huge, like a seismic drop in the numbers, and it proves actually that this kind of work is really important. The second thing is this really pertains to our values, and the conversation we had earlier on values and culture. We know that the highest performing and best performing organisations are those that are deliberately diverse. They don't just think it's a good idea. All the evidence from Harvard shows that the more diverse your organisation, your board, your different levels of leadership are, the more representative you are of the communities you serve, the higher performing you are, because you get perspectives from different people who see the world or experience the world differently. It brings real wisdom, it brings clarity, and in terms of the integrity for us as an organisation, the compassion to really hear and understand different perspectives, the idea that we're really respectful of different worldviews and belief systems and ideologies, and the fact that we want to be really inclusive. As a board, we need to champion and demonstrate the impact that we want to have in this area, both through the recruitment changes that are going to happen and the changes to the organisation in the months ahead, but actually really moving forward into the future. We cannot, I believe, claim to be true to our values unless we take this paper and the implications of it really, really seriously. It's a vital piece of work. It's going to improve us as an organisation, and I really do want to commend the paper to the board and make sure that we take it very seriously and take the actions forward.
Thank you, Andy. I would certainly second that. I was quite concerned to read some of the outcomes in that paper, particularly moving backwards is definitely not where I want our organisation to be. So how do we take, what's the next step? So I would like to see what we're going to do to improve this.
Yes, I think the next step, once it's approved, we'll publish it so that it's public. The second thing that we will bring back, and it's probably via the People and Culture Committee, is an action plan. I think we've been talking about board development, Emma, and one of the areas we do want to focus on is equality, diversity, and inclusion. And I believe you've already included it into the board development plan. So I think, you know, starting from the top is very important, and I think that would lead the way for us. But we will be developing an action plan.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on that? Yeah, we will be coming back to the board at an appropriate time to hopefully show some positive progress. Good. Okay. I think the final report is the report of meetings held in private and what was discussed. I'm pleased to say that it is shorter than the last report because there's... But I think it is important because there was a point at which we were having to talk about, you know, meet a great deal. So it's good that that's. But I'm very happy to take any questions or answer any questions, particularly from our regular participants. No. Okay. Thank you all for your patience. Apologies, my timekeeping has not been as good as it should have been. Is there any other business? Yes, Julie. Sorry, Chair. I think it's being dealt with separately, but no, thank you. No, I think we're trying to pick that up out. Yeah. Okay, I think, therefore, I'm going to declare this meeting closed.